Hey guys, it's Matt, or you may know me as Milks, and this is my podcast. So what's it all about? Well, I'm just your average 40-something dad that loves to game and talk tech, as well as relate with the stresses of modern day life. So come on in, grab a drink, and listen as we cover topics, stories, and welcome some of my fellow gaming parents on the show. Thank you for listening, and don't forget, please drop a follow, it's very much appreciated. Hello guys and welcome to the Dadcast Season 2 Episode 5. It's hard to believe we have made it to Episode 5 of Season 2. There has been a lull in between episodes because life gets in the way as always, and that is the theme of this podcast, is that life does get in the way, and hopefully this is very relatable, educational and funny, and that's what I wanted to get across when we do these. And today, no exception, I'm welcoming on a very, very nice guy, talented content creator who is on both Instagram and YouTube. And hopefully from this, we'll be able to dive behind the scenes and find out a little bit more about the man behind the account. Because I really enjoy finding out that we're not all perfect like our Instagrams, and what makes us tick, and how our thought processes are, and how we come to create content. And you might find something very inspirational, educational, or just very relatable about this. So without boring you too much, because I've already not pressed record once on this intro, so the second take wasn't as good as the first take. I'm just going to throw that out there right now, but we got the point across. But welcome to my podcast, Ben. Your Instagram handle, I'm going to let you pronounce this because I'm bound to get it wrong, but welcome to my show, Ben. You are a content creator on Instagram and YouTube, and you focus on tech, so welcome and introduce yourself, please.
Hi everyone, thank you very much, Matt. That's a very good introduction. And
second one was good. The first one was better.
The first one was nailed. I guess kind of like you said. Yeah, I kind of create content on YouTube and Instagram. I've been doing it for. I guess we'll go into it, but like the main channel and kind of taking it on myself for. Probably about 9 months.
That's not a long time.
And no, not in the world of some of the. I know, like the guest, kind of me following on from the legend that is Chris and Spawn Point.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we did set you up there.
Yes. I've been set up for a fall. I'll try my hardest, and I think it's I just kind of, I guess, summarize myself in like a bio of. Someone who just really loves tech and hopefully can understand it in a way to present it to others that makes a better either purchasing decision or kind of just is a bit more entertaining. I think I just love technology, kind of like cameras and mainly kind of Apple gear and gaming, and just really try to share that with other people that are very, very similar. And I've definitely found that over the past basically year. And being on a podcast again is really exciting to kind of chat about it.
It's very clear that you enjoy it. The big question is, what came first, Instagram or YouTube? Because your following is very similar. You're at like 2,800 on both. Is that deliberate?
Yeah. No, not at all. It's actually quite random that it's hit the same. It's kind of grown on Instagram a little bit more recently. And so the story kind of starts back in 2019. I was on holiday listening to the Peter Crouch podcast.
Yep.
So kind of outside of tech and everything like that, I'm a huge sports fan. And I was listening to the Peter Crouch podcast on holiday in Cornwall. And I just said to one of my best friends, I was like, we should do a podcast. I was like, we've always spoken about doing stuff. About 9 years ago, we started a YouTube channel while we were at university, and kind of that, obviously, you know, like most projects, kind of didn't really do anything. And I was like, we should do something about kind of our generation and kind of classic games and see where it kind of goes. And you might like just up here, there's a little plaque called the Man Cave. So we started something called the Man Cave Podcast, and we did about 18 or 19 episodes.
Nice.
Which is kind of where I've learned how to do some of this, I guess. Apart from my volume is definitely way too high, so I've just turned that back down. And then it kind of got to a stage where the pandemic hit, really. It was literally a year ago, wasn't it?
It is. We kind of started working. Was it yesterday?
Yeah, which is pretty mad.
Mad.
Really. And that just made it very, very difficult for us to do. So we used to do the podcast as like a video series, which we would kind of drive to each other's houses. We would do a little podcast. We'd play some games at the same time, and kind of it was just a bit more, really relaxed. And but it kind of got to the stage where we were like, this is really difficult to keep it up during a pandemic. We're struggling to kind of keep up with the content, and and it was quite strange. I did a few tech videos on the channel, and they kind of blew up. Like one of the videos got like 20,000 views.
Wow.
And we're talking, our podcast was maybe getting 150. Kind of really pushing it, really trying to kind of engage with people, but starting completely from scratch. There's no kind of backstory of us having like separate accounts with followings. We just had nothing at all. So we're getting back like 100-ish on the actual podcast episodes, and I did a few reviews. And one was on the PS4 Pro and one was on my old monitor, and it had like 10,000 views and 20,000 views, and I was like, oh, maybe there's something to this. It kind of came to the decision, and we were like, maybe we kind of go off and do separate things. I was like, I really want to pursue this tech thing, you're not really into tech, how does that sound? And that was kind of where I made the decision that sometimes you have to kind of go it alone to kind of pursue your creative ideas. And that's kind of where it started. And I think that was about June last year, where I kind of took it up on my own. Yeah.
It feels longer. I mean, your content is, for a better word, polished. You know, you watch the content. I know obviously you've ramped it up more recently, and I've been watching your videos, and you've got a sexy little slider, I think, on one of your more recent ones, which is really, really nice. And I've got a manual one with a shaky hand, so it's no good for me. But yeah, you know, it's great to see. I don't want to say small accounts, because I'm a small account on YouTube. I'm only like 370 subscribers, but I've been very sporadic over the last 3 years with it. But, you know, it's great to see that you don't necessarily need to follow someone with 90k, 100k, 120k, that you can actually learn something from and get inspired by these kind of smaller YouTubers, because it's just very passionate videos. You can tell the effort that's got into it, and you do it because you enjoy it. So it's really absolutely good. And it's also then nice to see the content come across from YouTube. That's something which I have to force myself to do, because of course Instagram is a very visual platform in terms of photography, so you don't want to be posting too much video content on there, because as we know, video doesn't always perform the same. It doesn't perform as well, especially in your feed. The feed is a dangerous thing that is counter creative. The feed is counter creative because you know what works, you know what doesn't. And it's not necessarily what you want to post, but it is what you feel you need to post to not have a shitty post.
Yeah. I actually did it recently with the new kind of like setup, kind of like intro, and it was like that. I wasn't particularly happy with the kind of like color grading on it. Anyway, but I kind of looked at the feed, I kind of looked at it, and I was like, oh, do you know what? I'm just gonna have to do this again, and it's awful to kind of like have to say that you kind of go, oh, you know, I'm gonna redo a post or kind of, you know, re-upload something, and it wasn't because of the numbers. It was purely almost like from a vanity perspective of it, kind of like looking, the aesthetics of it. And I was like, it was the first time I'd really done it, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna have to kind of redo it. But no, I really appreciate the kind of comments. I think it's really. People kind of talk about the grind and kind of like it kind of growing, and I think I noticed there was a period where I felt like I was on about 200 subscribers forever. And you're kind of like, oh, what is it that's going to kind of change that? And occasionally it's just like our video will have a slight pop. Either you get it at the right time, it's on the right topic, and you're kind of like, oh, cool. And I think that kind of gives you those little bursts of motivation to go, oh, actually, what I am doing is the right thing. It's just sometimes the YouTube algorithm doesn't quite fit, or it's the same with Instagram. You know, I can imagine. I know you've kind of discussed like certain posts that have kind of got like 7,000 likes, and you're like, what has happened here? And then you get some that are like at 1,000, and it's a strange game. But I think if you go in with the right intention of just you enjoy what you're putting up and you enjoy what you're talking about, it's a lot more natural, I think.
Yeah. I was watching a video earlier on TikTok. TikTok's obviously a very a poisonous time consumer. But you do pick up some good tidbits from there in between the dancing and the kind of real, the comedic stuff. There's actually some very good tutorial stuff on there, and Gary V obviously is all over it. So I always get a Gary V pop up every now and again, and it's about just get the content out there, just get the content out, stop worrying about it. But the thing is, when you're dealing with a very a visual world in the aesthetic, and your color grading and your theme and stuff, it is hard to break that. I've had it recently, obviously changing from a very kind of RGB orientated gaming setup, which obviously I still love, but in my heart for a long time I've been wanted to go a different way, and that's only because I've been inspired by other accounts like yourself, Michael Soldad, Chelsea Horn, Kevin, Matt and Vision, Max. You could just go on and on and on and on and on. There's nothing wrong with that, because if you're not inspired and you're not moving on, then you're standing still, you're getting stagnant, you're getting burnt out and whatever. I think sometimes it's good to have a change. I think for creatives it's really good. So the last kind of 12 posts for me have been breaking the feed and changing that look and looking at the numbers and going, fuck, it's not performed. What am I going to do? Do I go back and put those nanoliths back up and just do a hashtag, Assassin's Creed post because I know it's going to get 5,000 likes? But we do obsess with the numbers a little bit too much, because the last few posts I've actually enjoyed more than maybe the 15 preceding that. And isn't that what it really is about, is exploring your creative juices and improving yourself as a creative. And, obviously you do it with a target audience in mind, but if you're not enjoying it, I think that comes across.
Yeah, I think you can almost tell it with like some accounts, and you kind of like see people that kind of like dip, or there's like a potential reason. And yeah, I think you've kind of got to do it for the reasons that you enjoy it. It's weird, even though it's kind of like my account, and I absolutely know that it is a smaller account, and I just do it because it's almost like a challenge as well. Like there's trying to push yourself as a photographer or a videographer, just kind of somebody that wants to make something out of nothing. But yeah, you totally kind of feel it. Like I've even done it where I'm like, oh, this has started to work. This like kind of dark and moody sort of look definitely kind of gets a bit of a pop on Instagram, and then you're kind of like, oh, it's getting lighter now. Like we're getting more light. I know it's dark now with it being actual nighttime, but like during the winter it's kind of works, because it was like 3 o'clock was like peak time to take photographs, and then that changes and you're like, oh, when do I take photographs now? And you're thinking about Instagram and you're like, I just need to take photographs that I enjoy. It's a very interesting game, but I think it's a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun doing it over the past kind of like 9 months.
Massively. I mean, my wife still hates it, and I think she understands a bit more now, because my wife and I don't have any. I wouldn't say we don't have any similar hobbies, but our main hobbies are polar opposites. My wife is into fitness and running and exercise. She did a half marathon today after taking the kids to school, and now she's gone off to do a night shift. She is an absolute beast when it comes to that sort of stuff. Diet, fitness, that is her thing. She loves fitness clothing. She has an Instagram. She has a few Instagram accounts. She has a kind of Carly's Food and Fitness Journey sort of thing, where she posts her pictures of, I've just done a half marathon, and she loves to wear Tiki Boo clothing, and that that's her thing. But no care, and she won't mind me saying this because she admits it herself, but there is no care that goes into the photography or the post or the theme or whatever. They're all like Instagram filters at best. Lighting shit. It's just like quick selfie, whatever. But hers is more about, it's a diary of her journey. But we don't share this kind of this joint love of tech. So it's been really good. This has kind of been like a solo journey for me. And the crazy thing is, and I always say this, like anyone listen to this account, if you've known me for long enough, it's very easy to look at someone's account and go, fuck me, big number, they must be unapproachable. And I've always tried to break down that sort of vibe in
stereotype.
In that, we're just normal guys. And don't get me wrong, we all get DMs which you just think, oh, that is such a waste of time and a bullshit question, I'm not going to answer that, where it's just like, hey, or
Yeah, or the wave, the fire emoji is my favourite.
Yeah. So it's not actually engaging. If people actually send me a message, and go, "Hey, dude, I really like your content. I've got a question for you. What's your desk?" Or I always try and answer them. Send them a link to Amazon, Instagram, or to where I bought it or whatever. I always try and help people out. Loads of people ask about the monitor. Where'd you get it? There it is. It's cheap. It's only a 75 hertz, and I will try and help people out. But where it's just like, hey, no, not really interested, but. It's trying to break down those kind of those number barriers of my podcast is supposed to be approachable, Instagram is supposed to be approachable, but going back to me and my wife is like we have this very, very different sort of ethos. But I'm in a dining room. Everyone that's seen my podcast knows that my entire Instagram account has been done from this one room, and this one room, without adjusting my camera because I know it'll fuck up if I touch it, but I've got like my podcast setup is over there where you can see that soft glowy light. Here we have some sort of unit with all of our shoes in, which Sweet. Is you just got some flowers
the
on
mic
it.
Clears it up nicely.
We've got a dining table here, I've got the door to the kitchen there, and I've got a door to the cupboard here where all of our coats and shoes are. And yet I've somehow managed to create a 22,000 strong Instagram account. So I hope what people get from that is don't fucking obsess with like trying to create this perfect, amazing room or house or whatever. Although I'd love that, and you touched on Chris, because I teased Chris with it, because his house always seems bloody perfect. And
it's incredible,
if he hasn't got a room that's full of shit, I am going to be very, very heartbroken, because he's a dad of two like me, with a wife, with a normal life, with a day job, and I know with Michael Soldad, he gives us a glimpse into the chaos.
Yeah.
And I know Chelsea gives us a glimpse into the chaos as podcasters and Instagrammers. But Chris doesn't. He doesn't give us a glimpse. He doesn't give us a messy room. He doesn't give us a playroom or anything like that. But for me, my house is always a shithole. And it's livable. But it's not that it's neglected. It's just that we have two kids that are spoiled and they have loads of stuff, and our house is too small and we just have stuff everywhere. I've made them a new bedroom. I've made them a cinema room. We've redone the lounge. We've redone the kitchen. The dining room's been repainted. I've obviously done the new setup. But even with that, it's full of stuff. It's just full of stuff.
Yeah. So behind the curtain, if you look at my account, obviously we all try to make, especially the feed. We're always trying to make it as nice as possible. I think, obviously both of us are from the UK, and me and my missus, the one passion that we do share is watching crazy kind of property shows.
We all do.
I just love it. And
did you know that's what I do?
Yeah. I really wanted to chat to you about that because we're looking to try and buy a house. But it's a nightmare.
Sales and lessons. That's what I do. I've been a lessons director for 3 years now, in the industry for 10 years, but now my company, which there's 4 partners, they're like, right, our sales team is really small, organic. Matt, we want you to grow that. So now you're doing sales as well. So as of Monday this week, I do lettings and I run sales as well. So thanks for that.
That's a nightmare. We're I don't know about you, kind of like looking at other people's accounts and kind of like the space that they have. So we live in a 2-bedroom apartment in Manchester, and it's quite a large 2-bedroom apartment, but it is still a 2-bedroom apartment trying to do all of this and have an office in it. And I just look at the Americans and I'm like, damn, you have so much space.
Their rooms are massive.
They're huge. I
mean, granted, they're made out of paper mache and a women a prayer, but they do. Like when I can't remember who I was talking to the other day, but I was definitely talking about real estate, and I was like, well, I think it was actually on Clubhouse the other day, and I was saying, my house, although I wouldn't say it's small, but it's under 1,000 square foot for a 3-bedroom, double-story house.
Yeah.
And that, by American standards, is minute.
I'm always amazed at the size of the buildings that they have. Like you say, they're not very well built at all. But when you kind of see all these shows, and the stateside, and you're just like, we've got a 5-bedroom house. It's got 6 bathrooms, and how much did it cost them? $300,000. I'm like, how?
Yeah, how?
I just, it breaks my heart every time that I see it.
We're very spatial poor in the UK. Like when we got this house, It's because we had a 2-bedroom flat, much like yourselves. It was probably around 650 square foot. We'd outgrown it. We had Daisy, our firstborn, and we were like, right, before we wanted to have 2 kids, right, before we get the second, and we're both earning full-time money, we need to make that jump to a house. We need to make it quick. And we found this house, and it's one of those crazy things. And a property is very much like this. And I say this to a lot of people, you can strategize property as much as you want. A lot of it boils down to luck and timing. So we weren't looking. Our flat wasn't on the market. We didn't think we could afford a house. But I was just on the iPad. And as an occupational hazard, I look at Rightmove, and I try and see what properties are out there to keep in touch with the market, or just out of morbid curiosity, what's the prices of houses in our postcode. And we saw this house, and we were like, that seems like, it didn't look nice on the pictures, but we're like, okay, it's a 3-bedroom house. It was 200 and, what did we get it for? 220, no, 219 grand in Bournemouth, right down on the south coast. To find any house in the twos is difficult. But this was it.
Is a strush.
This was going, it's 5.5 years ago now, but I don't think prices have massively changed in 5 years, with obviously recession and COVID. But we saw it and we're like, okay, we went on the viewing. It was horrid inside. It was red wallpaper, black fireplaces, pattern wallpaper in every single room, dirty carpets, clutter everywhere. We're like, this is horrible. But it's 220, and that's unheard of. But apparently the house had been on the market, sold, sale fell through. That was over a year, and they decided to put it back on the market at the same price. So actually it had appreciated by a year. It should have been about 240, 250. So came on the viewing. Now, bearing in mind, my wife is the frugal one. My wife saves our money. My wife tells us how to spend the money. We don't go on holiday unless she saved the money. My wife is very good with finances. And I'm like, let's buy everything. Let's finance it. And she's like, no, we don't buy anything on finance. We save the money and then we buy it. And we came on the viewing, and she went, we've got to have this house. And I was like, excuse me? That's what I say. That's not what you say. Yeah. And she's like, we need to have this house. So the agent, obviously I was like, agent to agent, we need this house. I'm offering you right now full asking price on the viewing, because I know what it's like. If you haggle, you lose it. You insult the seller, whatever. If you want something, offer full asking price and worry about it later. I always say that to people, and that's not a sales ploy. If you want this house, you can buy it. If you want this flat, you can buy it. Just offer the asking price and you've got it. It's yours. When you haggle, the power comes away from you and it goes back to the seller. If you can't afford it, that's a different story. But if you can, don't haggle for the sake of haggling, because any property will be worth more in 5 years' time. And whatever you bid, it'll be worth more in 5 years' time. Get the fucking house.
Probably within the year, like whatever
exactly.
You go down.
In most times in the UK, within the year, you make it back. So I said, right, okay, we'll offer you asking price. We haven't sold our flat. We haven't got a buyer. I haven't got a mortgage in principle for this house. But if we offer you asking price, you just give us 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, we sold our flat to the neighbour below. We got the mortgage and everything. But it took us 9 months to get into the house because there was a massive chain and someone died halfway through the completion. And we didn't even know. Like, there was this old person in the chain who was in a care home, and they were like, oh yeah, someone's quite poorly and stuff. And then suddenly they died, and we were like, okay, where does that leave us? So it was 9 months to buy this house. So they had a year off the market where it had fallen through once at 219. Then we had almost a year to buy it. So by the time we bought it at 220, it was worth 265. Now it's worth 325. We've owned it 5.5 years, so we've already built, without doing any more than paying the mortgage, over 100 grand in equity.
Yeah.
But, it's just, property is crazy. The difference between, I'm sure it's the same in Manchester, there's a leap between flats and houses, a big leap.
Yeah.
And financially, there's a big leap in terms of what you can afford on paper. So you can afford a mortgage on a 3-bedroom house. I know you could, because you're probably paying down here, £700-800 on rental on a very basic 2-bed flat.
Yeah. And
it's the same on our mortgage for a 3-bedroom semi-detached house.
Yeah, when we made the leap to buy this place from what we were renting, and we were just out of uni, and we were renting a 1-bedroom studio it was extortionate because it was in the right area.
Yeah.
And the opportunity came up for us to buy, and we were going to pay less on the mortgage than we were for a 1-bedroom studio.
It's
on
mental.
a 2-bedroom apartment, and we were like wow, it like really opened up our eyes. And like going to kind of try and buy this next place because of COVID, it's a bit crazy up here. I don't know if you've had it the same, where we can't look at somewhere until we have a confirmed offer on our place, and it's just like, oh, yeah. So we're kind of like,
we're
right,
very
I'm just gonna
casual.
wait until...
I'll be honest, because I've only got involved in sales probably now when we're actually on the way out. But in terms of lettings, it's been more about, right, we've got videos on every listing. If you can take it based off the video's obviously been recorded now. It's not 5 years ago, so it's not like no misrepresentation. But we would prefer you to basically reserve it based off the video. If you have to see it, you have to. But in the last few weeks, it's just been full steam ahead. You know, our industry didn't lock down in November, December, although, you know, residentially we did. Our industry was allowed to continue, so that's all we've done. Yeah. We've locked our office, we've closed it off to the public, but in terms of viewings and stuff, we've just carried on. The complexity for us is, we're allowed to do it. That doesn't mean people want to let you in their house. So if someone's already living in there, to be honest, 9 times out of 10, it's a no. So
see, that's the crazy thing up here. It's all the agents that won't let us see anywhere.
Really?
But but if you do it online and kind of like message them directly, they're like, oh yeah, if you want to pop around, not a problem.
Yeah.
So it's a very weird kind of cultural change, and I think it's been really interesting kind of over the past year, looking at how different countries and even different regions have dealt with, like what really kind of has happened with COVID. Like I deal with the United States quite a bit. And I was kind of discussing some sort of kind of guided program, and I was like, oh, so how have you dealt with people working from home? And they're like, nope, everything's been open. And I'm just like,
wow.
What? Like, we're really kind of trying to figure out different ways of how to work over here, and they're just like, yeah, everything's kind of been the same.
I think. Do you think we struggle because of space? I mean, obviously the UK is quite small, and like we've already touched on the the work from home space. We don't have a lot, especially if you have kids running around. It's been very hard. Like my mental capacity and mental health took a massive battering, especially in the second half. I think the first half was very novel. And I find in my industry, everyone gave you a bit of a pass. Yeah. The first one was like, I get it, you're at home, you're working with your kids, it's fine, don't worry about it. The second one, they're like, I don't care if you're working from home, I don't care if your kids are screaming, I've got a leaking tap, I've got a leak coming through my ceiling, I want it sorted now. And the second one was very much like, you didn't get that little bit of forgiveness that maybe you weren't firing on all cylinders because you were working at home, because everyone's a bit jaded and like, I want life to continue, my tenants are still needing this, I don't care that you're struggling because you're all working from home. And it's very weird like that. So I was actually very grateful that we went back to the office 2 weeks ago, and although it was hard, don't get me wrong, it was hard to break that sort of thing of, I'm at home and I'm in my comfort zone, I'm in my jeans or my my joggy bottoms or my pajamas 9 times out of 10. That's the truth. It was hard to actually go into the office and do a 9 till 6 again and get dressed up and get in for 8:45 and run a morning meeting. It was really tough for me to break that, but I'm glad I did, because you kind of get into this little comfort zone of like working at 60% capacity and liking it.
Oh yeah, I think the first half of this, like kind of this past year, absolutely, like it was almost like this is quite new and different, and
morbid experiment but fun.
Yeah, it was like no one's ever had this way of life, and we can take a foot off the pedal and maybe reevaluate things. And I think I was in tracky bottoms for about 8 weeks, kind of straight. I was either in shorts because it was obviously quite warm as well. And
that was a big change. The weather was a big change to mood. I definitely saw that.
Absolutely. I remember kind of at the time, and we were like, it was when you go into a shop and you had to queue outside, and it just felt like life was a big queue. And I was like, the moment that the weather turns, I said people's moods will absolutely go down. I said people are dealing with this fine now because it's sunny. You can go out and you're in shorts and you're just waiting in the queue. It's fine. And then I was like, as soon as it starts raining, people are going to get pissed.
They are really...
People are not going to be happy.
And that's exactly what happened, because we're the same. Obviously, we haven't got a big garden. But it's, it's a nice little garden. But even being able to just open the door and go out and sit down and have a coffee and work on your laptop. You can dry clothing outside. All these stupid little things. Suddenly our back door's been blocked for 4 months because that's where the airer goes. So in our kitchen right now, there is a permanent airer from IKEA, which is just on constant rotation. Constant rotation. You can't even get into the garden. And it definitely has affected you in the fact that you feel a little bit more imprisoned in your home. And I do feel for people in flats. Obviously, if you haven't got outside space, in some ways it's a bit the reverse effect of like the summer. You probably were like pissed because everyone with gardens were like,
everyone's in the gardens. Yeah, everyone's on Instagram stories like,
oh yeah,
chilling out in my massive garden, and we're like,
exactly. Okay. I'm in my bikini working, and that's just me. And in the wintertime maybe wasn't so bad, but everyone that had a garden in the summer, come wintertime, were absolutely raging. They just couldn't handle it. But it's been absolutely crazy. But obviously in the UK we've got the next milestone is the 12th of April. Which is when I'm sure there's more stuff that opens, but all I hear is like the beer gardens open, the pub and the beer gardens.
It's quite an interesting one. Like I know I'm having a drink tonight. Like I definitely did kind of like my party years, kind of while I was at uni and kind of post uni, not massively drunk too much. So. And the cost of alcohol in Manchester has exponentially gone up to not quite London numbers, but they're definitely not what they used to be.
Yeah.
So we've never like massive drinkers, and everyone, all they've done is talk about the pub. It's like the pub will open. I was like, we didn't go to the pub beforehand. But now it's like, oh, it's this big thing. Like we're going to go to the pub, and it's just like,
yeah, I'm not a massive pub goer. I mean, Bournemouth has got a reputation for a night spot, but it's nothing like it was in the late 90s, early 2000s when we were going out, because I don't know what it is, but it just died. Like all the clubs down here, even before COVID, like all the clubs were shutting. All the clubs that I remember from my 20s, which were banging, like, what do they call it? Club 56 or whatever in America. Or, they were all very much like there was a 100-meter queue to get in one of the top clubs here. There's nothing like that in Bournemouth now. And I think just society has changed quite a lot in so much that teenagers aren't like teenagers in our day that were drinkers, drug takers, whatever. They're all a bit, the word is woke. I hate the word. I absolutely hate the word woke. But it's all I can, it's the only way I can explain it is like, I'm too good to go out and drink. I need to study and I need to get out in the world and save the environment and all that shit. But our town has really suffered for that. But also, all of the character pubs have been knocked down and converted into housing. So you have two things, and I said this on one of my other podcasts with Paul. There are two things in Bournemouth. You have shit club or rough pub. That are the options. There's no family pub. There's no like a nice thatch pub to go or a nice local where everyone knows each other. In Bournemouth, you go to a nightclub where you've got to look good, show money, very flash, very cokey. Yeah. The girls, there is a massive disproportionate amount of girls to men. There is far too many men in Bournemouth. It's a nightmare if you're single as a bloke because you cannot pull because there's too many good-looking guys. It's a bit like The Only Way is Essex, but there's no girls in the town. Put it that way. It's a really hard work. So the fact I actually found a wife is a miracle.
I praise you. Congratulations.
Thank you. I didn't always have this beard. If I had this beard, I think it wouldn't have been a problem. But I was very clean shaven and ginger back in the day. But I met my wife online. I'm not ashamed to say. My wife I met on Plenty of Fish, which is obviously a well-known dating site. There were plenty of frogs on Plenty of Fish before I got to Carly. And I almost didn't call her back. I remember with my wife, we went on our first date to ironically a thatch pub out in the country. Had a nice little meal. And we'd been chatting for a little while. And at the time, I'd had a few people on the, I had a few irons in the fire, so to speak. I had a few conversations going. And I almost didn't call her back. And I just thought, there's probably, as guys, we always have this. And girls, I think, probably have it too. You go for the ones which excite you the most, but they are not always the best choice. The ones that are a little bit dangerous and the ones that are a little bit kind of get your pulse racing, but they could be a closet full of fucking nightmares. And my wife wasn't like that. My wife was the one that had a good job, sensible, not wild, didn't go out and party. And I was just like, I like her, but it's a bit, And we did go on. I did make the decision to go on a second date, and the second date was a really long walk along the beach in this kind of peninsula we've got at the end of Bournemouth. We went on this kind of 5-kilometer walk, and I'm glad I did. And went on that second date because shortly after that we decided to kind of go out, and then 8 years later, 9 years later, 2 kids, house, married. So if anyone's listening, don't poo-poo internet dating. There are success stories. That does happen and it does work sometimes. And if you're ginger and bald, I heavily recommend internet dating. You can
still do it.
You can still do it. There is hope for you. Just grow a big beard. That helps too. Get some tattoos. That was a good one for me. Go to the gym a lot. Work out. You can't change your face or your complexion, but you can change your shape, and you can look a bit cooler than you would if you didn't do those things. But yeah, we've had a really roller coaster 8 or 9 years, and it's bizarre that I've come into this content creation world that you and I exist in, and she doesn't buy into it at all. And parcels come, and she's like, the other day I said to her that obviously, I don't know if you've seen, I had the razor parcels come.
I did. Yeah, I'm really intrigued about that, yeah.
And I got the chair and I got a few little bits. I put a little couple of bits in the background here. So I got a keyboard. I haven't even opened it yet. I've been waiting for... I got 4 days off from tomorrow, so I've been waiting to do all that. That's some more YouTube content. And I'm getting all excited because on my old setup, my old gaming setup, I felt like I hit a dry patch of brands.
Yeah.
And
I know what you mean, yeah.
people who, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but people who had smaller accounts than me were working with brands that I wanted to work with. And that kind of hit me quite hard of like, I worked really hard for 4 years to get my account to where it is in terms of numbers, consistent content creation, engaging with the community, all that sort of stuff. And it felt like the brands have started looking for something different. They haven't looked at audience size. They're looking more at the quality of the content, regardless of whether you're 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 50,000.
Yeah.
But actually, in a way, for me, I needed to see that. I needed to see that those brands that I wanted to work with were working with people with 2,000 followers and 5,000 followers, because it was the content they were looking at. They were looking at it and going, wow, this guy who's got 2,500 is taking some dope photography. And it kind of twigged to me, like, they're not worried about your audience size. They want to use that content with their audience. So if they take that picture from Brian McGee, that's a made up name, just in case anyone's wondering, don't search for it on YouTube, you might get something weird. They're taking that content, which they know is A-class, but that guy doesn't have a big following, and they're taking that and going, do you mind if we use that content if we send you a chair or whatever? And they put that on their account, and it looks amazing. And it took me to go, actually, you know what? Although I don't think my quality ever dipped, it wasn't what they were looking for. And it was
totally get what you mean there.
It's kind of a hard realization that, and it's quite nice. Again, people listen to this. Not everyone that listens to this are big accounts. They're just normal guys who are posting content, or girls who are on like 500 followers, 700 followers, and look at like 22,000, which I'm on, is like this unachievable mountain to climb. But actually, I think in a lot of ways, they've changed their tack, and they're going for these smaller creatives who aren't going to be demanding high fees or whatever, and then going, you take really great photography. I don't care if you've only got 1,000 followers. You take good content, you've got a really nice, attractive space. I'd rather work with you than the guy with 40,000 followers, because he's going to ask me for a fee and, all this sort of stuff. And you're passionate, and he's a bit more commercialized. So I think it's a good time. I think it's a really good time for micro creators or micro-sized accounts to get their foot in with some major brands.
Yeah, from my experience, there's been moments where I've been utterly shocked, because like you do look at it in that way, and I think I was at about, it was something really, really small. I think I was really trying to push for about 1,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I think it was only about 400 followers on Instagram. And it was a bit of a lucky punt. And someone had said, "Oh, I've applied for Nomad's partnership program."
Oh, Nomad are great.
And I was like, I'll slightly growing. I've got a little bit of traction. People are saying that they enjoy my content. I was like, I'll give it a little bit of a punt. Kind of put a message in, personalise a message, and say, I really like your brand, what you do. I've seen kind of stuff on MKBHD's channel about the wireless charger, and I was like,
yes.
And I was like, do you know what? It'd be really cool. And about a week later, I got an email back saying, you've been accepted on the partnership program. And I was like, it was like one of those moments where I was like, you have to be kidding me. I was like, no. And I think it kind of really hit me that it's exactly like you say. We're seeing a lot more kind of smaller channels now. And it brings up a really interesting kind of conversation. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of it is about tech. And one of the things that comes up a lot is the kind of cost for content creation. And kind of like in a previous life, the reason I can imagine people kind of would look at my account and go, the photography is quite good. I actually ran a photography company while I was at university, and that's kind of where the kind of passion really started. But I got paid for that. And apart from like a few fees with a few brands, so far I've only money from choking on beer.
Have some beer. Have more beer.
I need beer.
That is the solution. In fact, while you're choking, I just wanted to raise a tribute to the fact that you're one of the few people who have actually drunk on my podcast. I had an Irishman on the show the other day, and he was having like tea or some shit. I was like, what the hell? I was expecting like a full band behind you, some banjos and some Guinness and shit. But I very much appreciate you've gone for the what do they call it? The craft beer. Craft beer.
Craft beer.
I like Camden Pale Ale. What was the other one you had with the funky can?
And this one, so my missus got some for my birthday. So this one's a
nice. I've had that as well.
Hemisphere Session IPA.
There's not many beers I haven't had.
Yeah, it's. I would have thought I talk a lot more naturally after a drink.
That's the English way.
Apparently I play Call of Duty a lot better as well, which we've realised recently. But yeah, I think it depends on if you're listening to this, and obviously you've got I see it as a really large account, and kind of listening to Chris last week, he's got a huge account,
massive,
really growing, and I think it depends on what you're kind of going into it for. If you're kind of going, I have a skill as a product photographer, I'd love to work with brands. I think now it really doesn't actually matter kind of like what the size of your brand is. If you're coming out with really good content, you're going to get picked up. And I think it's just kind of like continuing to work at it. And if you really enjoy working either with tech, or if you enjoy photography or gaming, if you kind of just continuously try and kind of improve your craft, it tends to be that brands actually do pick up on it, which I've been quite surprised at, really.
Yeah, I think that's a big part. I tell you, the one thing that has kept me going, though, is definitely about building those relationships. I think Instagram is the main one. It's the main one where I find the most positive creatives hang out. And I think Instagram frustrates me in the fact that it doesn't recognize its core strength. In the fact that it is based around imagery. I mean, tonight was a prime example of why Instagram just fucking misses the mark every single time. Is that we all go on Instagram to post pictures, yet they are obsessed about competing with other platforms which post video. Now, I posted a TikTok today about our podcast, and it was 60 seconds long. It was actually only 41 seconds, but I knew that it was going to be longer than the 15 and up to the 60. That's not the point. The point is I wanted to port that to Instagram. Now, Instagram has stories at 15 seconds. It has reels at 30 seconds. And it has IGTV, which has to be a minute plus. So between 30 and 60 seconds, there is a massive hole in what you can actually create. Stories suck because there is a 2-second audio cutoff between clips. Yeah. So I posted one this morning on the way to work, which was just me chatting shit about my beard because I had a very good beard day. And even I played it back and I was like, I lost 4 words there. So it didn't quite make sense because it's not a seamless cut.
Yeah.
And I wanted to post our video tonight, which was 41 seconds about me talking about our podcast. And then on TikTok, paying tribute to another content creator who posts really good looking stuff. And I just had to accept the fact it was going to cut off after 30 seconds. So Instagram is like trying all these things. I wish they would just concentrate on what they're fucking good at. You're a photography account. Celebrate great images. Allow people who take great images to succeed. Don't kind of bottleneck them out of some weird algorithm that people need to be massively invested in commenting, sharing, engaging for hours at a time. Like, we don't all have that amount of time. It doesn't make us any less committed or passionate or talented or creative. But if you expect me to spend 2.5 hours on Instagram to trigger some sort of algorithm that says I'm worthy of being exposed to the hashtag reach, that's just cruel. Yeah. And it doesn't encourage creativity, because all we're doing as content creators is trying to conform with the meta. And
absolutely.
And at the expense of being unique and individual, because you, I'm sure, as guilty as me of going, I could post that image, but that's not what I know will do well.
I've kind of got to this stage now as well where you see certain stuff, and I've almost kind of got to a stage where I'm like, do you know what, I'm going to post it more because I enjoy it. I've enjoyed the photograph, and I kind of think, right, okay, I'm at about 2.5, that was 2,800 now, and I'm like, people will hopefully enjoy the photography that I bring out, or kind of the way that I discuss tech, and some of it works and some of it doesn't. And I found what was really interesting is sometimes you'll take a photograph and you'll be like, oh, it's okay. And they're the ones that blow up. Like the ones that actually I'm like, oh, that's
and it throws
cool.
You.
But there's a post that I've done, and it very much exponentially was very different to kind of like how many likes I usually get. So I think now it's kind of probably about like the 300 to 400 like mark is like kind of where I go, okay, that's kind of what I expect.
Yeah.
And it's got like 2,500 likes, and it's just a picture of an iPhone. I'm like, what? I just don't understand. And I'm like, I can understand now why some accounts kind of do iPhone photography or kind of like photographs of iPhones on almost every post. I'm like, the people are just gagging for it, clearly.
There's definitely a meta.
So weird.
Chris, again, and I don't want to kind of keep tooting Chris's horn because I'm sure it's big enough already, but he is a great example of like simplicity sometimes is everything, because those lounge shots, they look simple, but I know for a fact from trying to take those fuckers myself, they are not as easy as they look. And I know Chris takes them on his phone. Now, the biggest problem I find with taking those kind of pictures, now, I know he's got his TV at an optimum height. Mine's a bit higher. My OLED's a little bit higher on the wall. But you get this massive distortion on the lens. And it's about getting those horizontals and those verticals really well. Now, the problem is my TV is slightly higher and it's slightly angled back. It's sort of a 15-degree camber because it's higher up. Now, that doesn't translate well into photos.
Yeah.
And although I don't know if it would perform well because I haven't been brave enough to post it, I look at the image and go, it's not straight. It's not straight, and it's driving me nuts. And I took about 35 images. That previous post that I posted, which was, do you want to see more of the lounge? And that's how insecure I am. At 22,000 followers, I'm not like, I'll post whatever I want. I'm like everyone else who's feeling the same thing at 800,000, 5,000, who all think, what do I do next? I'm exactly the same. I posted that thing with a very much in my story of like, should I post this? Are you going to like it? I want to post it because that gives me some creative freedom, because I'm not just posting shit in this room. I want to, one of the main reasons, there was 2 reasons I redesigned my setup. One is because I wanted to work with different brands that I wasn't getting results from because my look wasn't what they were after. But 2 is because it was so hard to replicate that in any other environment. I had to be in this room. It had to be with that lighting. And what I wanted to do was be able to take a picture of my kitchen playing on my Switch, or in my lounge playing on the Xbox, or in my daughter's room playing on her little setup that I made for her, or even outside of the house. But I could apply that preset filter, whatever, and it would all be part of the same ecosystem. But the look I had 15 posts ago, I could only do in this space.
Yeah.
But I was too scared. I was too scared to take that risk and go, I'm going to post a different room. and it might only get 300 likes rather than the 900,000 whatever I'm used to. But there is a fuck it moment that comes where, as a content creator, you have to accept that anxiety and go, I'm going to let myself have a bad result on this post, because it's better for me to post it and accept that it's not going to do well than to not post it at all and wonder if.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest things I think I found kind of in the past year. And if anybody would ever like ask me, oh, what have your experiences been? And what I thought going into it was that I'd probably have to deal with some negativity, and some things would be quite bad, and you might get like some trolls, or you might get bad comments, or whatever it was. And I think what I've actually found is the polar opposite, and the overwhelming kind of feeling has always been really, really positive. And I think that's one thing that's actually surprised me the most. And what amazes me about, and I guess it's about people kind of coming out, because not coming out, but
they can come out if they want. That's fine too.
Yeah, and kind of actually discussing it, because regardless if you have 1,000 followers, 20,000 followers, or 1 million, I think a lot of people have the same anxiety about kind of like there's this natural pressure that you put on yourself to always do better, and to actually think, oh, actually I might do this and it might do worse. It's almost like a negative, but actually if it's for you and it's the right thing, that it actually makes sense. And I think one of my favorite creators of all time, and is one of the reasons I kind of do what I do and the way I do it, is Peter McKinnon.
Yep.
As I can
Good old
imagine,
Peter, the pirate.
I can imagine 5 million people around the world probably think the same. And I follow both his Pete's Pirate Life and his obviously his main account.
I've tried to get one of those damn coins for so long now.
I
have you got one, you bastard?
I have one.
I know you have, because you filmed it really well. And I remember, I think when you posted the video of you doing the spinny knife and all that sort of stuff, I was like, I tagged Peter McKinnon in it. I was like, this is such a good shot. You did a really good edit.
He's not replied yet.
He probably was overwhelmed. He probably was.
He was like, if I share this, then people will think he's better than I am.
Exactly. But he is an inspiration. I mean, even before I was trying to get into YouTube, I just watched him because he was entertaining. Yeah. And that's what I always tried to get across. And it is hard because YouTube, I've changed tack recently after being not mentored by Chris, but Chris has given me a lot of advice, and I've watched his account, and he posted a video recently of a breakdown of behind the scenes, and it actually, did you watch it? It was very good, in so much that I realised I was overthinking it, and I was over planning, and it would make me freeze into not doing anything, because I would think I need to get this is Peter McKinnon's fault. He's so good behind the camera.
Yeah.
I need to be I need to be in front of the camera, and I need to be entertaining people. And, I need to be this funny Ryan Reynolds-esque sort of snappy humour. And that, I think I could do that, but the problem is the planning to do that and the takes it would take me far longer than the last few videos I've done, which is do a quick script, film the content, do the script, do the voiceover, put it up. It's difficult, but it's a different discipline, isn't it, to actually getting behind the camera and entertaining people.
And I find it really fascinating. There's definitely been a few accounts that have definitely kind of pursued that kind of, I would say, kind of creative way a lot more. And I think Chris is definitely a really good example. I think it's difficult because I think I look at him currently as a someone who creates YouTube content and is in a similar sort of scope to him. Like, we're in England. I think the American market definitely has a different vibe to kind of like how their creators are. I think they're a lot more comfortable being in front of camera. I think it's a lot more to do with their culture. And I think it's been really interesting to see that transition. And I think, like, I've tried certain types of videos. Like, I know I've done one where I've not been in front of camera, but I actually feel more comfortable being in front of camera and doing an A-roll kind of shot and kind of like producing it that way than I actually do recording it and then coming up with a script. Because a lot of my videos, I'll have notes on kind of like the topics that I want to cover and make sure that I've reviewed. But a lot of it is like a note, and then it's a bit of kind of freestyle. and I can't do it with a script. I definitely tried. So it's like my setup tour. I recorded it, did all the kind of video, then did the overlay of the audio. But I really struggled. It took me about 4 attempts to kind of do it because I just couldn't do it within the time. So I look at someone like Chris and I'm like, it's really impressive how he's done it and find his creative start.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I can't do it. Like, and I think that's good. I think because we can't just all be carbon copies of each other, and it's trying to find the right style that works for you and how you actually kind of create your content.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's amazing is that we are all different. And I think that's what's unique about what we do.
I think the thing that opened the door for me with watching that video from Chris is and it goes back to the space I'm in, is to create a space that looked good enough for lighting, sound, background, all that sort of stuff in this one room that we use for everything.
Yeah.
It would take me forever. Like, you know, I'm not going to pan the camera again because my camera will probably mess up, but literally just over arm's reach over there, I've got all the school stuff on the table. So I've actually got 14 nanoleafs on the table waiting to go into another project. I've got 8 school books. I've got 2 big baskets full of crayons, pens, paper, diaries, you name it. It's just all over there. But if I knew I was filming with me behind the camera, that table would have to be clear, rotated. Then that would be my prop. That would be my desk, a bit like Lou from Unbox Therapy. You know, I'd try and get that desk look. Then I'd have to get the mic across the other side of the room. And it would take me like an hour just to set up. And then you're talking, 10 o'clock, your energy levels are low.
Yeah.
And I think I would prefer to be, like you say, I would prefer to be in front of the camera talking. But actually for my lifestyle, it was creating more stress for me than actually it was worth, because I wasn't getting content out anywhere near frequently enough because I would dread the setup.
Yeah.
So when I saw that video from Chris, for me in my life where it is right now in the space that I'm in, I was just like, oh, that's the game changer. I can film it on my phone. Filming on a DSLR and trying to get the lighting right and all that sort of stuff was stressful. And then suddenly, well, we know iPhones and most smartphones, their lighting technology is really good. So in a dark space with a phone, it's better than it is with a DSLR. DSLRs are actually very hard to get the lighting right. I can film on a phone. I've got a gimbal, and I don't need to be in the shot apart from maybe over the shoulder stuff. I can film it all quickly within about 20 minutes. And then I can edit it at my own pace. And I've done 2 videos. I did my autonomous Ergo 2 chair review, and I've done the LA Metric smart clock, and I'm about to do the desk. And it's not easy, but it is easier, and it's freed me up to. And like I said, I want to get a video out every 2 weeks. That's my goal. I can't do every week like Chris because that's just inhuman.
I have no idea how someone who has a job is able
and a
to
wife
do that.
and kids.
I think that's one thing that is really interesting about kind of like, especially like podcasts, and it's kind of opening up about the real world behind the fancy videos and the gorgeous Instagram posts is that kind of real world energy. And I try to do it on occasion, but I think there's obviously like a perception that you want to create of yourself, that you have got your shit together, and it's like, oh yeah, here's this fancy new piece of tech, and like, isn't this cool? And I think you almost sometimes have to kind of like check yourself. But yeah, I think why I like some creators like Peter McKinnon is, even though he has the amazing studio now, is there are kind of moments where he's kind of opened up and is like, this is literally a room in a house, and I have a cupboard. And he started off in a kitchen. I think it's really interesting taking inspiration from different people and kind of molding it into your own style. And it's definitely what kind of works for you to get stuff out. Because I've done it before where I've made projects and videos, and they kind of just sit there, and you're like, I'm just never going to get that done. But then sometimes you really find that click, and you're like, actually, I can get through this really quickly, and it just works and it flows. Like the last video I did, it's the first video I've done in 7 weeks. Because there's been no good tech, to be honest, like that's been out recently. And work's been really busy, and I was just like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to push through. I want to make another video. I've not made one for a while. And it was actually I felt like the most natural I've been for a long time. It's probably because I've taken that break as well. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of concept, especially to try and keep it up week after week. It is mega.
I do agree. I think breaks really help. I mean, you touched on Peter McKinnon being back in his kitchen. I think the ones I remember of his were when he was in his apartment, and it was all the little things. Like, I still haven't got it right yet in terms of practicals and, you know, what do they call them? So I have got a big spotlight up there which is just shining down. I've got what I call a filler over there, which is on my Alexa. So I go, Alexa, turn off the side light. And there we go, it's off.
Yeah.
Alexa, turn on the side light. There we go. So there's the fill light. And, you know, little things like that. And a practical, well, that would be a practical, I guess. But it's not actually in the shot. But those little things, like, they're quite hard to master and get right and things like that. But those videos, I mean, like I said in my little snippet on YouTube, on Instagram today about my beard, was there is always something out there. If, you know, in my day in school, and I commented on Kevin's post on Instagram today, and he was like, I don't agree with school. I agree with some parts of school, but I don't agree with you need to be good at school to be good at life. And I do massively agree with that. But when I was at school, they didn't have the internet. And they didn't have, they did have computers, but we didn't use them for the purpose that they're largely used for today. It was accounting and spreadsheets. That was it.
Yeah.
We didn't have Google. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have mobile phones until I was probably in the tail end of high school, because I'm 42 in, actually, I don't know how many days until I'm 42. It's not many. 12 days. I've just
happy birthday in 12 days time.
Thank you very much. Well, it probably might be 12 days by the time I fucking edited this, but I've got my LA metric which tells me my little countdown. But, you know, at 42 I grew up in South Africa. Not born, but I grew up in South Africa, and they were probably 5 years behind the UK. So I remember being in high school and being 17 or 18 years old when the first McDonald's came to South Africa. And it was a wow moment. And me and my friend Leon, I will never forget this. And we used to go in his car listening to Oasis. And we thought we were the coolest kids in high school. And he had bleach blonde hair. And I had the kind of Oasis mop. And we used to go to McDonald's and eat like 5 McDonald's cheeseburgers. And they were the best thing ever. Ever, ever, ever. Because South Africa, fast food sucked at that time. Yeah. South Africa, like, meat and fish as good as anywhere in the world. So if you went to a restaurant and had steak, or you went to a restaurant and had fish, I guarantee it competes with anywhere in the world. And it was cheap. Like, we used to go to a restaurant called the Fishmonger, and we used to have this calamari, and I've never had anywhere in the UK, and I've eaten in all around the UK, in Europe, but South Africa, they used to do something with this calamari, and it's not the rings that you get, and it wasn't the battered rings you'd get. It would be like a fillet of calamari. So it'd be like a little steak fillet. And they used to serve it in a frying pan with rice and all sorts of, you know, other fish and stuff. You'd have it with a beer. And it was like £2.
Oh, yeah.
It's just
I
unreal.
don't get the price of things here is incredible, isn't it?
Well, when we went to South Africa, it was the economy over there is rand, and it was 10 rand to the pound. When my parents sold up and we came back to the UK in 1999, it was nearly 20 to the 1. So for every 20 rand, you got a pound. Now, to put it in perspective, we used to have back in 1990, before we moved, we had a 3-bedroom semi-detached house in Bournemouth, which now would be worth, again, probably £375. We sold it for £70,000. Paid off the mortgage. We went to South Africa with £40,000. That £40,000 bought us a 2-bedroom bungalow with 2 double garages, front garden, back garden, palm trees, swimming pool, you know, heated swimming pool, lights, the works. But there were trade-offs. We lived behind electric fences, burglar bars, gun under our pillow.
Yeah.
We had all of that, and that was the difference. So in 1997, I matriculated. That's what they call over there. I matriculated from high school when I was 18. and I played professional golf. I was trying to be professional at golf. When I was 16, 17, 18, I was at the top tier of junior golf. I was playing for what would be county here.
Yeah.
They called it provincial over there. So my province, I played for my province, which was county, and then went into South African schoolboys and wanted to do that sort of stuff. And I came back to England actually to turn professional at golf.
That's incredible.
And I came over here from Johannesburg, where it was dry winters, hot, humid summers with thunderstorms, to -5, horrible, wet, depressing winter.
That's us. That is us.
That is England. Yeah. And basically, what I realised very quickly was, like most sports, and you said you're into sport, especially if you're in a team sport, although golf is a very solo success sport, because of the nature you play in 4 balls or with 2 people, you're always with someone.
Yeah.
So although your performance is largely based on your individual result, unless you're playing
like the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, you're playing like a team event like that, or a scramble, or a stroke play event with another person. Ultimately, you're hanging out with your mates, but your score is your score.
Yeah.
But when I came to England, I was like, right, I'm going to turn professional. I'm going to do all this, etc. I'm going to go on the tour and all of that. I had no friends. I came back to England. I had no one my age that I played with. I had no one to compete against. No one to kind of set the marker of like, this is good, this is bad. And I was 19 at the time. I was very good. I was a very big hitter. My distance was up there with Tiger Woods. I was a big hitter. I was very strong. I was very fit. I was a big hitter. I wasn't necessarily the most consistent player, but I was explosive. And I was like, yeah, we're going to give this a go. And I very quickly realised that it's not the same when you don't have friends to compete against. And I think the same could probably be said of cross-country, sprinting, javelin, whatever. The result is an individual thing. But if you're involved in a kind of a community, a bit like us on Instagram, the results are individual, but they're more rewarding when you're surrounded by other people who are equally as invested in you, as you.
Yeah.
In either, in our case, creating, but in sport, it's about competing. And if, like, I remember Clinton, one of my friends when I was playing with, he was always a bit better than me. He used to piss me off. And it would strive me on to be better.
I've had that a lot in sport. Yeah, there's always one. I think it's a good life lesson, isn't it? To learn. I love sports and like my involvement with sports because you learn a lot of life lessons, and one of them is
massively.
Quite quickly knowing that there is always someone better than you, unless you. It's like my sport kind of growing up as a kid was tennis. Like obviously played football a lot in the UK, but the one that was kind of slightly unique that not everybody at my school did was tennis. And yeah, you quite quickly know that unless you are a professional tennis player, there is a lot of people better than you. So you almost have to just go, I just need to continue on my game and improve. And I think in a way, like this very strange, I do think the world of social media and what it's turned into is very different to I think the original idea of what it actually was meant to be. But I think what it has done for people of a kind of creative nature in terms of things like photography for Instagram and video for YouTube, it's almost like a competition between each other to see who can like do better.
That element I love. That element of social media I love. The bit that I don't like about social media is it's really hard to put into words because I watch TikTok quite a lot and I don't try to get too involved in it because when I do get involved in the negativity on there, it spirals into the fact that it does affect me quite a lot mentally. But I look at the world as quite a hateful place, and sporty competitiveness, I think, like you said, is healthy. I think playing sports at a competitive level teaches you shitloads in life. I think the same can be said for going travelling. I think going travelling and going outside of your comfort zone and going to somewhere of a completely different culture gives you empathy, and it also shows you how to stand on your own 2 feet. The problem I find with social media now is that there is a critic for everything. and you're wrong for being on any type of standpoint. Like,
Yeah.
I'm old enough, and again, apologies to anyone who listens to this because I don't want to be a controversial podcaster, but I posted the other day on an account, and I just got so many comments back, and it did affect me for 2 or 3 days. But there are various topics going around at the minute about gender identity. Obviously, there's a lot about raciality and all of these things. And having grown up in South Africa, I've seen firsthand the poison of apartheid. And I grew up in South Africa in a time where we made the transition in 1994-ish when Nelson Mandela came in.
Yeah.
And we went from the F.W. de Klerk country, who was the last president of the country under probably pre-apartheid era, but was widely regarded as a good leader of the country, but probably the last person that was regarded as the old regime.
Yeah.
And then Nelson Mandela came in, and I've met Nelson Mandela. He was a really, really nice guy. I met him at a sporting event because he likes his sports, as you could tell. And if you watch any
rugby.
of the, he loves his rugby, and he also liked golf, believe it or not. And I met him at a golf club, and we didn't have a conversation or anything. It was nothing like that. It was more like a kind of a fleeting thing where it was just like, "Hello, how you doing? Yeah, very well. Nice to meet you," etc.
Like meeting the Queen.
Exactly. It was a bit of a regal wave, and the security guards were around him. But he was widely regarded as the leader of the new era because he came in with a very clear ideology of, if you work on an eye for an eye, the world goes blind. And that is exactly what the country needed at the time. Was if you come in and take over, trying to correct all the wrongs of the previous 20, 30 years, you're just going to end up getting in the same position in reverse, and you're never going to heal. So 94, 95, 96, when South Africa won the Rugby World Cup, I'm just very privileged to be involved in that, because I've never known a unity like that where there's very few other countries, when you talk about racism, that had it as bad as South Africa. Apartheid was, even now I'm still learning how bad it was, even though I lived there. As a kid, 16 years old, 15 years old, you could kind of didn't...
Not exposed to it as much.
Weren't exposed to it. You're a bit protected in your own bubble, etc. And there are massive complexities in South Africa when you talk about racism, because there are so many different levels and cultures. I think they said there's like over 18 different tribes in South Africa within one ethnicity who don't like each other. So
yeah, one thing about humans is we just don't like each other that much.
we don't, and it's very hard to explain to people, like, unless you've lived there. Like, I try not to get involved in it, because if you talk about it from a white man's perspective, it always comes across wrong. But when you've actually seen it, my best friend in high school in South Africa was what they call it in South Africa, and it's a perfectly accepted term, or it was at the time, was Cape Coloured, which is mixed race. They call it mixed race over here. But in South Africa, in Cape Town, you called it Cape Coloured, which is basically, white parent, black father, etc., whatever. We were best friends. I had ignorance was bliss for me. He was my best mate. He was a really nice guy, got on well, went to his house, etc. But then I learned, like, later on in life that, they didn't like the more tribal African ethnicities or whatever. So you've got this kind of hierarchy, and very complex. Really complex, and not as easy as black, white, AB.
Yeah. Really
complex. And unless you've lived in those sort of countries, you can't even fathom how complicated
can't understand the culture of it.
You honestly can't. And equally, what they have over there that they don't have in the UK is a complete and utter disregard for human life. And without, again, being too morbid and things, the reason I came back to England when I was 19 is because my dad's best friend had his son hijacked in a car and murdered. And he was shot through his windscreen. He wasn't hijacked. Like, a hijack is like, get out your car, take your car, whatever. That's the old ways. And it was becoming much more apparent that it was safer for the person hijacking to kill the person in the car and have no repercussions, no witnesses. So they were just going round and basically shooting people through the windscreen and dragging them out the car and driving the car off.
Terrifying.
Now, I was, I think at that point I was 17, 18. The guy that was killed, my dad's best friend's son, was 21. And he was shot through the windscreen 4 or 5 times, dragged out onto the side of the road, left to die. They took the car, obviously went off. Never caught them, ever caught them. And my dad had to go to the morgue with his friend Costa, who was a lovely guy. I remember him so well from my days playing golf. He was a guy that was a successful businessman, very friendly. He was Greek. He was a Greek South African, and Greek South Africans are extremely accommodating and friendly. Would give you the shirt on their back. Very funny, very friendly. And my dad had to go with him to this place where they identified the body, and he said it was frightening in the fact that there were hundreds. Like in the UK, you probably think there's maybe a handful of people in there at any given time. Like murder in the UK is still pretty extreme.
Yeah.
He said he went into this place and it's like something out of an American war film where they're all laid out in a hangar. It was just endless with people in there. And they obviously went through the process. It wasn't nice, and obviously did all of that. And I was on a plane within 6 months back to the UK. And many, many, many years later, that guy who was the father's his son, he ended up killing himself because it was so traumatizing to do all of that. But South Africa, wow, what a beautiful country with such a massively complex history that you never comprehend. You never comprehend it. America, as bad as America has been and is and still is, and all that shit going on, South Africa is like it's a powder keg of history, politics, racial inequality. But unless you've lived there, you can't even fathom it. But yeah, that was very dark. We went very dark then. But
yeah, I'll turn the lights down.
Turn the lights down. But that's part of my history, I came back to the UK at 19. I went into retail. I was a golfer. I went into golf retail. I went into work for JGB Sports, which probably in Manchester you know well.
But I'm not actually originally from Chesterfield. I'm actually originally from a town called Chesterfield, which, if anybody knows, obviously the people that I'm like school friends with that I'll share the podcast with, they'll be like, wait. But yeah, I moved to Manchester for university. But JD and JJB were quite big at the time.
It was
big
huge.
Into football. We used to go all the time. It was like the weekend trip to JJB to try and find like some sort of football top.
Well, I did love there. I mean, I was there for 10 years. I made my career at JGB, and by the time I left there, I was in my late 20s. I was a store manager, was earning good money. But the early days of JGB, when I was working in there, when they had basketball courts and all sorts in there, it was a really fun place to work, and it was really, really good. And by the end of it, they kind of lost their way. They were trying to be Sports Direct and be cheap. But then they were also trying to be really expensive with their gym equipment and stuff. And they kind of were like not doing well at either or. Like JD were premium, Sports Direct were cheap. JGB was some sort of amalgamation of the two in this grotesque love child of both. But they didn't do either one well. So in the end,
Instagram.
Yeah, very much so. But they had too much stock. Like I remember working at JGB, and when I worked there, it was at the absolute peak of stock. Like my local store is now a Sports Direct, like most of them are, and it's full of shit, and the carpets are fucked and the walls are horrible, but that's what they do. But when I went there, it was premium. It was, everything was nice, basketball courts, golf equipment, trainers. When I ran the trainer department in Bournemouth, it was one of the biggest in the country. We had over 1,500 styles of shoes on the wall at any time. Now, when you think 1,500 styles of trainers, and each one of those come in 6 to 7 sizes and multiple sizes. My stockroom was like a Amazon warehouse, and that was just one local store in Bournemouth, and it was phenomenal. I mean, I used to love working in trainers because I was a football fan, which means I got to see football boots that came at the cutting edge of the market before anyone else. Nike Mercurials, Adidas Predators in their prime when it was Gaza and people like that, before they kind of came really commercial. Puma, Kings, Adidas World Cups, Adidas Mondials, you name it. We used to get like the best trainers first, and then they just lost their way, and it was very, very sad that they just went downhill very quickly, overextended themselves, went into a market that they shouldn't have gone into, tried to sell far too much cheap shit, and it was just, it was tragic in the end. But I have good memories of working there.
Yeah, my kind of experience with work is, I actually feel quite. It's quite different. Like, obviously, you talked about South Africa there, and kind of, sometimes when you hear like really interesting stories about where people are from and kind of like what mixtures of cultures and ethnicities there are, and I always look at myself and I'm just go, I'm such a boring white English man. Like, I'm from quite a nice middle class town, and then I moved to Manchester, which is, I think, one of the coolest cities kind of in the country to live in. And I'm just like, I'm not that interesting. And I always find that as a bit of a disadvantage, especially kind of working for international companies, and you're kind of like dealing with really cool, interesting people. And I'm now in a role where I'm dealing with even more interesting, cool people. And people are like, "Oh, so tell me about you." I'm like, I'm just a guy from England. Like, it's.
But really, people love that. How old are you now, Ben?
I've just turned 28.
So I mean, I'm 42. I've got a lot of years on you, and I think people do have this fascination with English people, especially if you are going with the American crowd. They do love that. Although I will say, I've watched many of these films that I'm sure you have that say if you're English and you go to America, you're going to get laid very easily.
Yeah,
I went to New York. It couldn't be further from the truth. Now, I was told that New York basically is a bit different to the rest of America because it's very, very cosmopolitan, very English. There's lots of English influence there and things like that. It's not the same as going to Oklahoma, where you actually really stand out and
like
people
Utah
are fascinated with
or
it.
somewhere like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I've only ever been to New York. That's the one place I've been to in America, and I was a bit heartbroken. I'm not going to lie. And you talk about being interesting. I'm gonna shame you even more at how interesting this holiday trip was to New York. We went there for I think it was 5 days. We went there in winter, and we got to do the whole Central Park in the snow, horse-drawn carriage. I'm a massive film buff, massive, and if you grew up in that era where you had New York was in everything, whether it was Wall Street, Ghostbusters, or even more recently, I Am Legend, Avengers, any of those. Lots of stuff is filmed in New York.
Always New York.
Always New York. New York, like aliens love New York. Terrorists love New York. Everyone just fucking loves New York. It's obviously a great place to film. And we stayed in the Waldorf Astoria, which I never realised is like a few hundred yards from Central Station. So the scene where I Am Legend, where Will Smith drives past and he stops the car, reverses up, and the mannequin is at the end of the walkway.
Oh, yeah.
That's basically Central Station, and it's about 500 yards from the Waldorf Astoria where we were staying. So you were kind of like going, wow, that's where that was filmed. And then you're like, well, that's where and Avengers came out after this. So I went there just before that I Am Legend time, but Avengers was a few years later, and now I'm like, yeah, they filmed that. Like, I literally stayed in the hotel next to that. But then it brought me back to my childhood of going, that's Ghostbusters Towers. That's Ghostbusters Towers right there, where they had the kind of building and and the car went in there, and the restaurant not Times Square, where the gardens are. The what do they call it? The main square where all the gardens are.
Times Square.
It's not Times Square. It's where the where the ice rink is and the gardens in the middle, like in the middle of New York. No, the actual.
See, I've never been to New York, so
the green. We'll find out later.
trying.
But there's this massive green area in the middle of New York, which the whole city surrounds.
Central Park.
Central Park. There we go. Central Park. Yeah, you got it. So Central Park. Home Alone. You've got Home Alone 2. Yeah. You got the Plaza, which Donald Trump owned. We went in the Plaza. We went to all the toy stores that you see in Elf and all of those. We went to Central Park. We ate in the restaurant where Rick Moranis in Ghostbusters comes up to the window and bangs on the window, and then the dog comes and takes him and turns him into the gatekeeper or whatever he's called, or the keymaster or whatever. And going around New York, if you're a film fan, is like, wow. it's an absolute wow because there's so many memorable landmarks. Even like I think it's called Hitch with Will Smith when he was like the dating guru.
But like Valentine
Fitch
guy,
or Hitch or one of those two, and they're basically where not the Statue of Liberty is, but where all the slaves came off and signed their names and all that sort of stuff, and that's all over there. So you can go to all of that. You go down to Wall Street and you see the big bull where you touch his balls and you get good luck, and we did all of that. Ground Zero, we went there after 9/11 and obviously went to Ground Zero where it was all knocked down and very, 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 very emotional and poignant. And a little bit mystical almost. It's like weird to say it, but like when you're in England, you watch the shit on TV and you go there, it's like, wow, this is all a bit surreal. Yeah. It's a bit surreal. But one of the coolest things that happened to me when I went to New York is in it wasn't quite Times Square, but it was near Times Square. They were doing a Kitchen Nightmares reopen with Gordon Ramsay.
Shut
and
up.
We were standing by Macy's and I saw across like 2 junctions away there was this big crowd and people filming, and there was this guy in this big Red Lobster suit, and I was like, that's a bit weird. And what's going on over there? It's obviously New York, so they're used to cameras, there's always shit going on. I was like, what is that over there? And then I was like, I think I recognise that dude over there, I'm pretty sure. And then we turned around, I was like, it's Gordon Ramsay. Gordon Ramsay's over there, and we're from England. It's like, that's like our hero. Like Gordon, he's an Englishman in New York, literally. And we went across the road and we got involved in the crowd, and we were talking to like their producers, and they were going around the crowd, and we're like, we're from England, we know Gordon Ramsay, da 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 da. And they were like, well, would you like to come to the relaunch night? We've already done the kind of the pre-Kitchen Nightmares, the one where they go in and he rips them apart, but we're doing the reopening of the restaurant in 24 hours time. Did you want to come down to this place in Lower Manhattan or wherever it was? And we're like, yeah, we'll do that, definitely. We're not doing anything else. We're staying in our hotel. So we're like, yeah, let's do it. And they gave us the address. We didn't know where we were going. And we thought, we'll go on foot. Because Manhattan is not that big a place. We'll go on foot. And we were walking down to this restaurant, and each kind of, it's all grids in New York. It's all kind of this grid system. And each avenue we went down, I think it was Avenue, it was like 5th and something. Each one we got down, it was getting rougher and rougher and rougher. And we were like, oh
maybe
shit.
A taxi.
And exactly. And most of New York has got scaffolding up all around the buildings. Like that's the one thing that was disappointing, is like 80% of New York seems to be under scaffolding because it's fucked. But we were going to this restaurant, we're like, this is really ropey, and we were just feeling really uncomfortable. There's a lot of people looking at us. We were dressed up really nicely, thinking Kitchen Nightmares, need to put our best gear on. And we got all the way down there. Thankfully, we weren't mugged or killed or whatever. And we met Gordon Ramsay, and we had to go into this room. We had to sign a waiver to say we'll be on. And we were the second table in. And as a result of that, we got kind of like this premium attention because we were like first in. Gordon Ramsay was fresh, and he was like, right, we're going to welcome you in.
Not too angry.
Yeah, he hadn't got angry yet. And we remember going into the restaurant, he was like, so welcome, yep, Gordon Ramsay here, this is the restaurant, this is what we're doing, come on in. And they had the cameras there and they were filming it, and English people who are on camera, who've never been on camera before, get the giggles. So we were a nightmare. Because, all of the people, like later on, by the time we got into the evening, you watch all the New Yorkers, and they've obviously done this before. They're obviously used to cameras because of all the films that have been recorded. So they are all naturals. You watch any New Yorker on camera, it's like they've been YouTubers
of their life.
For 25 years. For us, it was very hard to keep a straight face. So we went into this restaurant, and it's actually on YouTube. It's called The Black Pearl. And you will see me and my friends on there, but we're very much edited out because there wasn't much reusable content.
You're all giggling.
We were giggling and stuff like that. So we went in, and he was like, right, lobster machine. We've changed it from fish and chips to luxury fish and chips, lobster, blah, 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 blah. And they, those claw machines you get in the arcades where they pick up toys? They rigged one of those to pick up lobsters. He's like, right, I'll pay for this one. Come on over. I'll put my $5 in. And we're all stood around it. Cameras are over our shoulder. And the claw goes down, trying to pick up the lobster. Doesn't work. The claw breaks. And then you get pure Gordon Ramsay. Fucking machine. Fucking paid $20,000 for this piece of shit. You over here. Come fix this fucking machine. And we were like, oh shit. This is crazy. So, we had all of that. And then we're like, right, we'll go sit down now. So we were like the second table sat down, and then the whole place just gets really busy really quickly. And there was this young guy who's very prominent on the TV program, fantastic maitre d' or waiter or whatever you want to call him, but he was very charismatic, friendly, comes out really good in the show. And the owners come across as absolute arseholes. They're one of the
always
worst.
do, don't they?
In the whole series, though, they were like the worst too. In particular, this one guy. And the funny thing is, you don't know any of this when you're there, because that's obviously built up over a few episodes or a few hours. So you go in there thinking everyone's going to love Gordon Ramsay, because who doesn't love Gordon Ramsay? He's like a national treasure to the UK. But they fucking hated him. They absolutely hated him in this one. And I remember the food coming out, and it was unreal. The food was unreal. And they'd come to our table and be like, hey, so we're going to film you now, blah, blah. And the waiter would come over and go like, hey, guys, this is the course. This is what it is. Da, 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 da. We've changed this on the menu. And we were just like there going, okay, cool. And then the camera would like swoop in and be on my face. And they'd be like, so you enjoying your evening? And like my friends opposite me, there was 4 of us. They were pissing themselves nervously. They weren't laughing because everything was funny. They were just nervous. We all had this nervous energy of like, fuck, we're on camera. We've never been on camera in our lives. So we're all giggling. And every time they come over, trying to say something, fucking one of us sets each other off. So we're all starting to giggle again. So all of the footage of us having an actual conversation, we all had something to say, was all cut out. So all you can see is me from an angle eating, and then me at the bar where they've cut it, and I'm at the bar, and then we're having a drink. And what we were actually doing was finishing a meal, really nice, went to the bar, hung out for the whole evening with Gordon Ramsay. We met a New York police officer that starred in Goodfellas as a New York detective.
What?
It's the most interesting night I've ever had in my life. This detective was a proper hard, semi-retired New York detective who was involved in obviously 9/11 in the city, but also he was a film extra who advised in detective series. So he was in Goodfellas, he was in some other major New York film, and we checked it afterwards and we're like, that's him. That's the guy we were talking to.
God.
And I've got a picture of him. I will send you this picture after this podcast of us stood in the bar with his arms around us, this proper kind of slick back haired New York detective. But we were stood there with me, him, Gordon Ramsay, all of our friends, getting pissed in this tiki bar within this fish restaurant for like 3 hours. You don't see any of that in the thing.
No, but you have it as a memory, and now it's on the Dadcast.
Best experience, like one of the best experiences of my life. Going to New York.
We had this is the difference between, I guess, New York and a town like Chesterfield. So when I was 18, I was the manager. Like I kind of managed my parents' pub, so they kind of owned it, but like during the night time I would run it.
Nice.
And there was one night where I wasn't working, but there was a cult TV show in the UK called How Not to Live Your Life.
Yeah.
And I absolutely loved it. Ran for 3 series. It actually ended up having Laura Haddock in it, who's in Avengers. She's Star-Lord's mum. So we were like, yeah. So nice. she was in it. That's my 6 degrees of separation to an Avengers kind of link. And so we went to a gig with the actual kind of guy. It was the main kind of character, but he all produced it and kind of wrote it and everything. A guy called Dan Clark.
Yeah. And
we went to his show, which was kind of like his own kind of comedy gig. And at the end, it was quite a small show. And at the end, I was like, "Oh, should we? I'm gonna ask him if he wants to come to the pub, which was around the corner, for a pint." And I said, "I'll get it in." And 18, like I was there with my best mate, and he was laughing. He was like, "No chance he's gonna say yeah." So I was like, "Screw it, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it anyway." So I went, "Dan, I'm a massive fan. Like, great show, loved it. Really random. What are you doing tonight?" And he was like, "Don't know. Probably just gonna go back to the hotel." And we were like, "Well, I actually manage the pub around the corner. Do you fancy coming for a pint after?" And he was like, "Do you know what? Yeah, sounds like a great idea." He and the kind of co-producer, a guy called Ben, who's a musician, came. We got Greg's in. We got pints in. And I always remember just kind of going, "Do you know what? Even people that are on the TV that you think are like, oh, these are really cool, kind of famous celebrities. If you ask them for a pint, they're probably quite happy to get drunk.
Everyone loves a pint. I mean, that's the I definitely in Bournemouth. I really miss, because my family are from Yorkshire. My dad's from Yorkshire. My mum's of Irish heritage. So by nature, we should be in a pub. I should be in a pub. I should be borderline alcoholic, which I probably am anyway, drinking at home. But like, I definitely know the Yorkshire culture of going to the pub. Everyone knows everyone. Yeah. That's what you do. That's your social scene. Bournemouth doesn't have any of that. Bournemouth is well regarded as a very desirable town. We have 7 miles of sandy beach. We have the New Forest. We have greenery and sand. We have the best of both worlds. We have a very moderate climate. We have lovely beaches, lovely countryside. But we don't like to socialise. It's very weird that the town is, I call it soulless. It doesn't have the vibe of Brighton or the uniqueness of Brighton or the kind of the passion or characteristics of it. It's got none of the heritage of Scarborough. It's got none of the coolness of Cornwall. Bournemouth has fuck all apart from lovely beaches and temperate climate. It's become this kind of grotesque, semi kind of commercialized town where it's never one of the benefits is it's not seasonal. Bournemouth is busy all the way around. It's not a seaside town like Cornwall where it might go dead within a certain village for 6 months, 7 months of the year. Bournemouth's always busy. The climate's obviously a big part of that as well. But there's very little soul down here. People don't socialise. If we socialise, it's a bit like South Africa. We go to each other's houses. Yeah. We have a barbecue. We hang out. No one can be fucked to go out and go to the pub because it's too expensive. The pubs are rough, or like I said, it's pubs or clubs. You go to the clubs, it's all the teenagers that go to uni, and we're a bit too old now, and we feel a bit weird, and it's packed, and it's shoulder to shoulder, and it's £7 a pint. Who cares?
Nobody likes that.
Exactly. Or you go to the pub and you think, only get glassed, but it's £4 a pint. So there are a few micro ale bars which have cropped up in the last couple of years, which when we come out of COVID probably would be where we go. Or we have these places called, I don't know if I think they are a multinational chain or a national chain within the UK. They're called the bar chain, and it's called like the Soho Bar, Conto Lounge, Soho Lounge, things like that. And they're kind of a bit of everything. They do tapas, they do nice wine, they do beer on tap, but not a load. It's loads of sofas, 1930s, 40s, kind of like comfy sofas and lampshades and art on the walls. That for us is where the kind of 30 to 50-year-olds go.
Yeah. Yeah.
But other than that, there isn't actually a lot to do down here. You end up, and again, accommodation's quite expensive, your house is quite expensive, running costs, all that shit. So as a town, although we've got all of this on our doorstep, we actually feel very limited in a way of life sort of way. I think if you said like quality of life, all of our money goes into our accommodation, probably a bit like London. Whereas all my friends are in Newcastle, Manchester, place like that, who earn the same as me for doing the same job. The houses are lush. They got much more space, and they got loads more disposable income.
It's pretty crazy, isn't it? Like,
it's a weird one.
I've had the kind of conversation with one of my best friends, and I think kind of like naturally, almost seemingly in the UK, like I did a degree in business and marketing, and the kind of the ebb and flow always felt like you go to Manchester, it's really cool to kind of be in, but if you want to make bank, if you want to make money, you go to London. And yeah. I'll be honest, that is true. It's like what, in a strange way, kind of like what's happened to me in the past year is COVID has actually kind of globalized a lot of things, which has actually been a huge benefit. And I think some people have benefited, obviously some people haven't, but it always felt like London was, you have to go there to work for the coolest companies, to earn the most money. And I always just felt like, and I think it's, I've kind of adopted almost the Manchester attitude, which is a bit of a fuck you attitude. It's kind of like, we're in the north, it's not as polished as London. There is a real part that I actually really like about that as Manchester, which is kind of a little bit of a underdog mentality, because it hasn't got the big names of all the massive banks in Canary Wharf, and I kind of really like that grittiness, and in a way, I kind of want to kind of almost do that on something like YouTube and kind of Instagram. I guess that's a bit of my motivation, is almost a, not fuck you, but kind of, oh, hello, EOS webcam utility beta. No,
I am here. I think it might have overheated, but let me. That's fine. As long as you can hear me.
I can still hear you. We're good.
Let me just do a quick reboot, because it's never done that before. But then we are an hour and 40 in, so it could have just been a heating issue.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm on a Sony, and they are pretty notorious for for overheating, which is good that we live in the coldest country in the world.
Exactly. My dining room's not exactly the hottest place in the world, but there we go.
You're back.
But yeah, no, I get that. The thing is with London, what it's shown is it's the place that has taken the biggest hit because of COVID.
Yeah.
It's taken an absolute battering. Like the company that I'm a director in, one of my fellow directors is also an owner of an estate agent in London, and they will tell you like nothing is reopened. That the city's not reopened. It's still very, very dead. People have moved out, and I know for a fact that the Bournemouth market is booming because we're only just shy of 2 hours, maybe less than 2 hours on a fast train to London. But you can come down here and buy a house for 300 grand that will buy you nothing.
You can't. Yeah, one of my best friends has had that problem. He's done really well for himself, and he can't afford anywhere. He's like, no. I can, and his decision is that he's thinking of moving back to Manchester and kind of going, look, I'm gonna take a pay cut. Hopefully, can earn the same amount of money, but he's like, I'm happy to take a pay cut because I'll actually have a better quality of life.
Yeah.
Living outside of London, and I think one thing that I've kind of learned from COVID, and I think one of the major benefits of the internet is there's definitely been some, there's a lot of negativity around the internet, but I always try to find the positive in things and look at it as an opportunity instead of kind of what a lot of people see who don't educate themselves. I think it comes down to a lot of the time like education and use of a tool, but I find the internet now has just opened up so many more opportunities. Like I've seen creators, and it's kind of like someone like the Rice Bucket on Instagram.
Yes,
and I think he's from, I want to say Vietnam or like the Philippines. Like it's definitely kind of Southeast Asia. And there's a lot of content creators from there, which we would never have seen through kind of national, like through TV or any kind of normal media scope. And I think if anyone's like listening, kind of going, oh, can I still build an influence, and can I still build a brand, or kind of build an account, it's almost like the most difficult time ever because of the market and like how many people are on there, but also it's like the best time because it's so much more accessible. And if you go in with a really positive attitude, I think people are quite attracted to that. Like yourself, you put your personality across, it's always very positive, and people are naturally attracted to that. Whereas I think it's a really interesting scope. And
self-depreciatingly positive, that's my niche, which is basically the shit happens to all of us, but let's just get through it together.
Exactly.
But it is, I mean, Ben is a great example. Like he was again one of the accounts that I saw last year. He was probably the precursor to me finding people like Michael Soldad, and then getting to know Chelsea, and being on 2 of their podcasts now and on Clubhouse and things like that. Is there is always good influences on there. I think if you go on, the thing with social media, you have to give quite a lot. You can't just play at social media. If you've got any sort of interest in making something of yourself on there, you've got to give a lot before you receive back. And that could be in many forms. That could just be on commenting on people's posts all the time. But myself and Michael have kind of joked about this quite a few times on a podcast. But I remember reaching out to him. And I reached out to him with a voice note as opposed to a message because, I was just busy. I had the kids with me. I was on a holiday. I was trying to keep an eye on them. I couldn't really concentrate. So I was like, right, I'll just record a voice message while I'm watching the kids run around the playground. And, it turned out to be such a great move because it just got my personality across. And he was a 50,000 plus Instagram account. Yeah. And you think, there's no way I'm going to kind of connect with these people. I might get a conversation, but I wasn't expecting anything out of it. But I listened to Coffee with Creators and thought, I'd love to be a part of that. And I feel like I have something to give. I've got, like you said, I've got that personality. I'm I talk for a living. I feel like I've got enough life experience to be interesting. And I was like, how do I get into this space? How do I get into these creators? Because it's not where my niche was at the time. I was a gamer and I had a gaming account, and it was very much around RGB and lights and all this sort of stuff. And even Michael himself, when I looked at your account, I was really intimidated because you look like this kind of like PC master race sort of gamer. And it couldn't be further from the truth, because I know fuck all about PC. I've built a PC now, but I did that at 38 years old. Before that, I'd never even had a proper gaming PC, and I wouldn't even call this a high-end PC. It just looks nice, but.
I'm very intimidated by the PC game, not because of the build, but just because of the price.
It's a what do they call it? They call it it's like it's quicksand of gaming. Is the thing is, I come from a console background. I grew up in the era of the Sega Mega Drive, the Nintendo Family System, going into the more modern consoles, PS1, 2, 3, 4, all of that sort of stuff. I came from consoles. Pre-console, I was on a computer with the Spectrum ZX48K and the Commodore 16 and the Commodore 64, so they were computers.
Yeah.
But I was so young, I barely even remember those. But I came through the console generation of. The first console I ever bought for myself with my own hard-earned money was the PS1. And I remember getting Metal Gear Solid on it, and it was life-changing. It was a life-changing game for me with Metal Gear Solid 1. It was just incredible. So I get the PC Master Race thing, because you do look at people's accounts, especially people who know how to build this stuff, and you think, I'm nowhere near any of that. But I built my first PC using YouTube and play, rewind, pause, play, rewind, pause. What am I doing wrong? Message a few people. And now I'm on my third PC, and I kind of feel like I'm still nowhere near an expert, but I know a lot more than I did. But what I've learned from that process is a lot of the guys that are really experienced in PCs, they're not snobby and they're not kind of like judgy. They're just a year ahead of you.
Yeah.
And they've built up a little bit more experience of troubleshooting to go, yeah, I had that happen to me. I know exactly what problem you've got. You need to take out that battery. It will reset the BIOS and you're good to go. Someone in our community who is John, who is in Royalty RGB, and he's an older gamer like me. He's a bit older than myself, but he's a wealth of knowledge. But it doesn't come across as like, I'm better than you. It's just like, I'm older. I've done it. I've done it a few more times than you. So try this, try that. And the amount of times on both my PC builds I was stuck and I had problems with my motherboard and my BIOS and whatever, they're just like, try this. Nope. Okay, try that. Nope. Okay, try this. Bang. Works.
It's pretty great. And I think it kind of goes through a lot of life. And I think it's almost when you're kind of presented with somebody's account. And I think like if I look back at how much I've kind of grown in a year, just in terms of kind of like either if in investment in kind of like either equipment or actually just understanding the equipment better.
Yeah.
You always see the snapshot of that moment. And it's a lot of the time, if you kind of go back all the way back into somebody's account, either their first YouTube videos or anything, I think we can all agree most of them are pretty shit.
100%. I don't have to go that far back.
I look back at if I kind of picked up my first video now, I did it on my iPhone. I did it with I had no lighting. I didn't even have like a microphone. I had nothing. I literally just did it on a tripod that I had, an Amazon tripod, which I'm actually still using now. And I think now, like because of the accounts that I follow and I'm inspired by, I kind of go, oh, I can push myself even further. But if you actually kind of always take that moment outside of the bubble and go, oh, actually, if I look back a year ago, like either I wasn't doing it or I was really bad. And yeah, I think you almost kind of forget the journey that you've gone on because you're always striving for that next next moment. And yeah, I think it's really nice to, especially like in kind of like a podcast form and like listening to Coffee with Creators, you kind of, I know they were kind of like chatting about gear the other day, and it is always like a bit of a, not a worry, but there is that kind of like competition to buy more equipment or buy the best
100%,
equipment. And
100%.
And I think like coming back to, I know you kind of mentioned it right at the beginning with like Amazon parcels every other day, it seems. And like my missus, she always just says, like if the buzzer goes for the Amazon guy or DPD, whoever it is, she goes, "What have you got now?"
Yeah,
That's the phrase that I get all the time. It's like, "What have you got now?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's a lens, or oh, it's a microphone, or it's this." And she's like, "When is it ever going to stop?" I'm like, I don't think it is. Like, I think it's always a continuous progression.
I think it is. It's a never-ending journey, as they say. But the funny thing is, when you get to a certain size, you can get away with blagging that you got it for free, even if you didn't. So I'm like, I get a pasta. Like, the funny thing is, this week I did get quite a lot, and like after a period of a drought of stuff, I've been very fortunate to get a few bits, and I needed that because I was starting to get a bit kind of a bit despondent of like none of my hard work's paying off, and like other people are getting gear that I want and I'm not getting it, and etc. And then it just turned the corner and suddenly I had a few big bits coming and I was just like, okay, great. But there was a time where nothing was happening and I was trying to force the issue of like, I need to buy shit to push myself on, and packages would be coming and Carly would be like, you're getting quite a lot at the moment. Are you like, did you these free or whatever? Like, yeah, that was a free from that brand.
Message me on Instagram. It's free.
Yeah. Just don't check my credit card statement. But there is that. There is constant. I don't think it's gear shaming, but I think it is. Is the bar keeps moving up, and in particular, like even this, like I've got a Canon 77D, which I love. It's the first camera I've ever bought for myself, which I didn't kind of like inherit or whatever. And it's nice, but it's only 1080p. Although it's 60 FPS, it's 1080p, which for most formats is fine. But now I know there's 4K 60 FPS. I'm like, I can tell. When I watch someone else's like YouTube video, I'm like, yeah, you can really tell the difference between 4K and 1080p. Because although I render this in 4K, because apparently the YouTube algorithm, and again, go back to algorithm, don't try not to it. But I did hear that it's better to render 1080p in 4K, whatever that is. That was a Peter McKinnon, I think, that told me that. It still doesn't look as good as the 4K stuff. So I'm in one kind of part of my mind, I'm thinking, I'm going to need to upgrade that camera soon. You don't need to upgrade the camera because the content is more important than the quality. I would say it's better to have it that way around. Great content, poor quality is better than having high quality, poor content that you're either not getting out consistently enough. If you've got someone that posts a great looking 4K video every 6 months, then what's the point? But if you've got someone who's giving great content, engaging content, informational, educational, entertainment, whatever, and they're putting that out every 2 weeks, but it's 720p, they're going to have a bigger audience.
It's pretty crazy. I think one of the things that I learned, I think as someone kind of starting out, you do see, I kind of did I think it was like when Instagram Reels first came out, and I kind of like joked, and it is that, there's always that conversation, and it's like, oh, the gear doesn't matter, it's fine. And it's always creators that are shooting on a £5,000 camera with a
Sony
£2,000 lens with top-end Rode mic like equipment. It's like, honestly, guys, the gear doesn't matter. And it's like, well, if it doesn't, why do you have great gear? And I think there's a real fine balancing act between having gear that allows you to try something different or be able to show something in a different way. Because it's like, I don't want to bring him up too much, but Chris does shoot everything on an iPhone. It's like I have an iPhone 12, and theoretically I could, but I like the style of what a DSLR can produce.
Well, the biggest thing I like about DSLR is the depth of field.
Yeah.
So the one thing that an iPhone can't give you, and to be fair, the type of content that Chris films doesn't require it. So because he doesn't sit in front of the camera, he doesn't need that lovely Peter McKinnon crispy, melty, blurry background. Like even with this, I struggle to kind of create that because I've only got a 24mm lens, but it's a crop sensor, so that's more like 30 something,
36 and a half or something crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. So actually, it's quite hard in this space to create that lovely depth of field. But because Chris is doing very much behind the camera, pointing out stuff that you need to see, iPhone's brilliant for that.
Yeah.
But like I say, you and I probably aspire to doing a bit more Peter McKinnon and having that, that Chris Howe sort of
Yeah.
cinematographic, buttery backgrounds, all that sort of stuff. And unfortunately, you cannot replicate that with a phone.
No,
you can't.
I've tried. I've tried like lighting with an iPhone, and you can make good looking content with that. And I think it's almost you're kind of striving for your own style. And I think that's what's really important. What I learned quite quickly was you can try to replicate people, but the way I've seen kind of growth is actually when I've gone, actually this is kind of my style and I quite like this and it works for me. And then people kind of go, oh, it's quite, I guess it comes across as a bit more genuine instead of being like a copying. And I think that's one of the big things, isn't it? It's finding your own style, going, yeah, I like that. And
you definitely have to, because sustainability is a word as well. Like in my life, in particular with having 2 young children, a wife, a job, the fact that Carly works nights, she's working nights tonight, so she'll be at home at like 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, and I've got to get the school run done, is I cannot do what those people do. I want to look like them, but I cannot. I might be able to do it for 2 videos or 1 video or 3 videos, but I cannot sustain that for a year. So you've got to do what works for you. By all means, be inspired by people, but it has to be sustainable. And if you're faking it to make it, it will show up within 3 weeks, a month, and you will just completely go off the boil. You'll stop creating, you'll burn out, whatever, because you're not doing it because you enjoy it. Or you do enjoy it, but it's so hard, like I said, about creating this studio within this room. It's so hard to do. Podcasting was a lot easier because ultimately it doesn't really matter what's happening in the background of my videos because we're just chatting. And only recently I've converted these into videos. So up until now, it was actually a really nice relief that podcasting is just talking and we didn't have to worry about video. So it has added a little extra dimension of stress that when I'm setting up these, I'm like, right, let's make sure, you can't see the shit that's there. You can just see some flowers and some RGB over here. But it's not quite as bad as doing a YouTube video with lighting in 4K and whatever. This is, it's more like a fancy Zoom call like we're doing. But yeah, I think it's really important. I think it's a really good kind of end of podcast is to summarize, you've got a much bigger following than I on YouTube. And obviously I've got a bigger following on Instagram. But I think the quality of work that we're putting out, there's, I would say there's nothing between it. Although they're different styles, numbers mean nothing. I would say your video content I aspire to is a big Instagrammer. I look up to you as a YouTuber, and I think that's a great thing that people can do is take inspiration from various accounts. It doesn't need to be Peter McKinnon every single time. It can be Matt and Ben who do their own thing. And like I say, what I try and get across in this podcast is that I'm as normal a bloke as you can get, sitting in a 10 by 12 dining room, creating a 22,000 follower Instagram, just by grinding, doing hard work, trying to do things different. Engaging with the community is a massive, massive, massive part. Do not underestimate the value of talking to people. I enjoy it, but it is a lot of work. But when you crack those relationships, like, we probably didn't know each other a year ago because I was more in the gaming circles. But by stepping out of my comfort zone and getting into what I'd call hashtag desk setup, not gaming setup, desk setup, which is a whole nother vibe, work from home, work hard anywhere, that sort of vibe, I liked it. And because I liked it, I reached out to one type of creator, Michael, Chelsea, etc., and then it opened up doors to you, Kevin, Max, Matt and Vision. I name loads of people. But if I'd have stayed in gaming.com, I would have had great relationships, but I would never have met you and all these other great people who have made me grow, improve, try different things. So that's the wonderful thing about social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that it opens up doors. It opens up, like we said, about growing, going overseas, working in different countries. All this stuff does help you grow. Social media, if done right, is a great tool for education, growth, stepping out of your comfort zone. I think Instagram in particular is a very good social platform for largely avoiding toxicity, like Twitter has and even TikTok has. and people promoting these hard, extreme left-right ideas. I just come on to create, have a stress-free life, meet fellow creatives, have fun, have a bit of a banter in a very harmless environment. And for me, it's a hobby. I work full-time. You work a normal job full-time. This should be play.
Exactly.
And if it becomes anything else, great. But I guarantee this, for me, will never pay the bills. Not in the way that my job does, my 15-year career in property does. I would love it to, but it's not. It's never going to be that. It's my hobby. It's my plaything. I get free shit, which is great. I enjoy it. It's like a little perk of like, I'm a 42-year-old content creator who's a bit of a nerd and a gamer, and I get a fucking Razer gaming chair sent out to me. That would never have happened 10 years ago.
No. No.
It would never have happened. So the fact that I can do that, I started my Instagram account at 38, 39. Look where it is now. If I can do it as, someone who I would say is very underwhelmingly intelligent, but very good at speaking to people, relating with people, hanging out with people and building relationships. If I can do it, anyone can. If I was 21... knowing what I know now, having the life experience that I have, 100% social media could be a career.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating kind of time. I think it's been going around on Twitter recently about the, kids now, like what's their most aspiring career. And a lot of people say YouTuber.
Used to be football.
Yeah,
used to be football as a kid.
Used to be, I want to be a footballer. And
yeah.
I want to be a sports person. And I think the internet has definitely shifted that, and I think the one thing that I don't think people see, because you only see a 10-minute YouTube video, you only see a post on Instagram, is actually the hours of hard work of learning how to do that to make something that is either something that is creative, something that can be engaging and or thoughtful. There's hours that go into the background, like the amount of hours that I've spent on something like Final Cut Pro in learning how to edit or just learning how to use a camera properly. I don't think kids, and I say kids now feeling like an old man, but I don't think people actually realise doing that is actually a skill in itself. And I think I feel quite lucky just on the precipice of my age group of we were brought in with the internet, but it wasn't the whole piece. I still play football with my friends every single night. We played games, but it was together at each other's houses. Whereas I feel now people go, I want to be a YouTuber. But I actually think if you look at who's made it on YouTube, they're actually older people that understand conversation and you used a word earlier, empathy.
Yeah.
Huge thing. I don't think you can relate to somebody and watch them for 10 minutes every other day for years if you can't relate to them. And I think anyone who's slightly older who goes, oh, it's a kind of a young person's game, it's absolutely not at all. I think if anything, it's better.
And the thing is, I don't think many of us have actually been on any courses to learn what we've learned. We've had to do it on the job. And, like I mentioned in my Instagram story today, like if you struggle with something on YouTube, it'll be there. But it was never there when I was younger. We didn't have that instant resource, that instant thing. If I am old enough to remember, if you needed to learn something specialist, you had to go to the library. And it was a wild time in the library. There was still people in there. But everything is so accessible. So although there is more reason than ever to succeed, there's more competition probably than we ever had at our age group. In particular, mine being 10 plus years more than you, is that there was a much bigger and more obvious gap between the intelligent and the not so intelligent, because the way you had to digest information in those days was very much by book. And you had to go on a course and study. There wasn't that kind of instant accessibility to YouTube. Like I loved YouTube. Like when I used to own a clothing store with a friend, and we used to have these files coming through that I didn't know what they were, and this was Photoshop at the time, because we used CorelDRAW, which is a CAD program. We used to design T-shirt prints and cut them out on a vinyl press and cutter and heat print them on. Just basically T-shirt printing. But we used to use CorelDRAW, and all these files were coming through from PSD files. Like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. I haven't got a clue what this is. And we were we were very comfortable using CorelDRAW. We'd convert from PDF to JPEG and then trace all the lines. It was mainly outlines, but I was like, I want to learn this. I want to learn what this PSD is. And I basically, just went onto YouTube and taught myself. Went onto YouTube and built a PC. Went onto YouTube and learned how to, build a TV cabinet, whatever. We've got all this information that's so easily digestible. So there, like you said, there is more reason for anyone to succeed at YouTube and Instagram, but no one really who hasn't done this realizes the amount of hours that go into it. A 10-minute video is 5 hours because it's 45 minutes of editing, transferring it, whether it's onto hard drives, onto a laptop, then it's put it into Premiere Pro, dealing with all the crashes and the fucking freezing and all that bollocks, and then editing, then doing your voiceover, all of that. By the time you've actually got it onto YouTube, typed in the hashtags, the meta searches, all that shit, it's 5 hours to do a 10-minute video. Yeah. And that's what people don't get. So when people say, "Oh, you social media, what you doing? Instagram, what's that about? You just posting pictures." Yes, I just post pictures, but I've got a hard drive with over 50,000 images for 3.5, 4 years of Instagram, and I've only posted 986 of them.
Yeah.
So it's a big thing.
It's quite incredible. I don't think I think one thing as well that's always quite struck me, unless you actually do it, you don't understand it.
You don't.
There's a huge kind of consumption of like your photography, my photography, and it is actually quite mind-blowing sometimes when you think that amount of people have seen this post or anything like that. But the actual amount of people that create to consume is maybe 5%, if that. And I don't actually think people quite understand. And a lot of people, like some of my friends, have kind of gone, "Why do you want to do that? Like, what are you getting out of it?" And I'm like, "Oh, I get to produce this, and this is kind of like a bit of a creative outlay for me." And I don't think unless you actually do it and put yourself out there and actually kind of try to engage with people, that people quite understand. And I think that's why
you can't empathise with it. No, yeah, that's it. That's why even my wife is just like, she knows what I do, but she doesn't get excited what I get excited about. She doesn't get excited with the fact that that post has done well or that brand's reached out. And even though there's a brand that reached out to me recently that I'm really excited about, which I haven't actually got the gear yet. Obviously, I DM'd you about another one, which again is another one I'm really excited about. But I missed the fucking email. I missed the first email, and luckily they followed up and were like, "Oh, I'm not sure if you got my previous email." I was like, "Oh shit, yes, I absolutely want to work with you guys." And hopefully they get in contact with yourself as well. But it's like, I was really excited by that, and the thing that's sending out isn't inherently valuable, but I know that it's part of an ecosystem I want to be in. Of that type of content creator. So although it's not they're not sending out a £500 product, but the fact is other creators that I aspire to and I admire work with this brand. So if I'm getting involved with it, I'm doing something right. I'm on the right track. Yeah. And that's what excites. It's not the product that overly excites me, although I will, obviously be quite happy to receive it. It was more a validation to go, I'm doing something right. So I got really excited about that, and then Carly's like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. You're getting a key ring."
It's
a bit more than a key ring. It's leather.
It's like I got I had Ben Q reach out, and I got like the little light bar thing.
Oh, the screen bars, best thing I had last year.
Yeah, and it's
can't live without it now.
You kind of have it, and people are like, "Oh, what do you kind of get sent out?" I'm like, "Oh, a light bar," and people are like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but other people that I like." Every single one of them on top of their monitor has got a BenQ light bar, and I was, and it's quite interesting, isn't it? You kind of like, oh, I really hope that potentially like they might notice my account and they might reach out, and because that's kind of like something that I like, and it's a bit of a shift because you're not almost a consumer of electronic goods, but you're almost like a promoter of things that you actually like, and you hope to work with those brands. And yeah, it's like, I'll be honest, one day I really hope to get some sort of deal with Rode Mic because I like the style that they make and like the equipment that they bring out. And I'm like, they reached out the other day and reposted one of my pictures, and I was like, that is so cool. Anybody else, if I spoke to any of my friends and said, Rode Mic reposted one of my pictures on their Instagram account, and they'd be like, who? They'd be like, one of them might go, oh yeah, I know who they are, but it doesn't excite them. And I think that's the kind of difference between
Yeah.
the consumer and people that want to work with brands and what's exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
it's-
and it is great, and there's no substitute for that feeling of, like I said, validation is a big one, because you do it. We do this obviously because we enjoy it, but we also do it with a sort of personal development goal. We wouldn't have sustained our Instagram or YouTube for this long if there wasn't a payoff mentally of reward of. I think if you've got any ambition in life, in whatever career you're in, you have to see a progression path.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
And I think the best content creators last the longest because they're always on this linear progression path of, I want to get better, I want to get better, I want to get better, I want to aspire to work with that brand. And in my case with this new setup was like, I keep getting not backed by this brand. No matter what my number is, it didn't mean anything because they didn't like my content. It wasn't what they were looking for. So what I've had to do is go, right, back to the drawing board. Let's recreate the space, redo it, take 1,000 pictures, do 15 posts, totally break my feed. And guess what? Those brands I want to work with now want to work with me.
Yeah.
But you have to keep accepting that you've always got to evolve and grow and improve and better yourself and aspire to more. But I think that's what we get from this as content creators, is that actually soothes our soul of improvement, improve. And the accounts which don't grow are because they don't have that same drug or that same kind of reward from doing that.
Yeah, it's been a really great, I think a really good life lesson. I think that I've kind of taken from it over the past kind of year. It all kind of started with a conversation in a car, and someone said, "What would you actually want to do if you could just say dream job? What would you want to do?" And I'd be like, "Really would love to be a tech YouTuber." And someone just went, "Why don't you do it then?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's a really good point." And I've done it, and I say I've done it. I've tried to kind of like put my stamp on that kind of space, and
you've made that thing in the space. All you have to do now is be consistent and expose yourself with other social media channels and things like that. Right, so that's perfect time to come back. I was as a man with a 42-year-old bladder, I was struggling for the last 10 minutes there. So, but that is good timing because I've just noticed we are coming up to midnight. Now, this is one of the pitfalls of being a UK content creator is all the cool kids in America, they want to hang out with you when it's like 2 p.m. their time and it's like 10 p.m. ours, and like by the time you come off it's midnight. But I think this is a great time to wrap up at 2 hours and 13 minutes.
That's impressive.
And we did say at the beginning of this, these 2 hours creep up on you, but I think it's a testament of the fact that I think we're all really nice people on social media, especially in our circles of the tech environment. And obviously, you wouldn't want to come on to a podcast and hang out for this time if you kind of got a vibe of like you're not going to enjoy it. So I get that. So it's kind of like a warm lead into the podcast. But having said that, every time I jump on these, it's always really nice and natural. And I feel like everyone that's come on these shows, I would really like to go and have a drink with and just hang out in the pub. It'd be really interesting. And we'd have a good time. So
absolutely.
My big goal for this is once COVID, although we don't think it's ever going to really be over, but once it is over enough that we can hang out. What I plan to do is to try and organise a big UK get together for content creators, partly Royalty RGB, which obviously the community I run, which have been talking about this for what feels like forever, but equally just the wider Instagram community from the UK. So Chris, Spawn Point, Ray Alexander, Ryan, all of those sort of people, Beth, Amy, Owen, I could name loads of people from the UK, yourself. Let's try and do a big UK get-together, and I think that would be something really good to look forward to in otherwise shitty times, is find somewhere in the middle, whether it's Birmingham or somewhere like that, and have a big gaming get-together, go out, have a massive meal, have a few drinks, stay in a hotel, have a great laugh. That would be brilliant. I think that would make my year.
I think that's a really nice idea because we've all spent a year connecting virtually, either through Zoom or through Instagram, through YouTube, and through comments. But we've done it kind of previously with work and before COVID, and we always said the things that we actually enjoyed the most was the kind of get-togethers where wasn't even chatting about anything necessary, but yeah, I totally be up for that. You know, we've not done anything for a year, so any opportunity of any social event now is like, yeah, let's go and do it.
I think it's brilliant, and if it works, it could be a yearly event or a bi-yearly event or something like that. But I'm definitely up for that, bringing all the content creators together, because I again, I say to people who don't know Instagram, and you'll have friends like this, is they don't get these virtual friendships. And I know virtual friendships have become forced on us because of COVID, but they were friends before it. I only saw them once every 3 months anyway, so it wasn't that different. But all of the people that are purely virtual friends, the ones that I only have ever spoke to online, they feel very close. They feel very close to me now as people. Like, I obviously Royalty RGB. We've got a chat group with. Because Instagram has a limit of 22 people in a chat group. I have 22 people that have been in that group now for 3 years. Yeah. And, I know everything about the kids. I know when they're ill. I know they've had COVID. I know they've had deaths in the family. I know, I know so much about these people. I know more about them than I do actually what's going on with my close friends who I've known since I was 21.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
It is real. It is a real thing. So I do feel like yourself and everyone that I've met on my podcast or just chat to in real life, I know that it wouldn't be weird. It wouldn't be a big leap now to just be like in the pub. The only difference is a physical handshake rather than a sign off online. But beyond that, I've seen everyone. I've seen their faces. It's not like back when I was a lot younger and maybe there was, you only had the photo of an account as the best photo of themselves. You never heard their voice. So when you did meet people from online, it was very weird. And you were like, oh, your voice doesn't sound like how I thought it would. Or you look very different to that one picture you posted on MySpace. I've been there and done that. And I've been the person who's probably done that to other people as well. But I think, I think Instagram, YouTube, you do get to really see the real people and relate with them and build these relationships. You build these kind of like virtual relationships. I think they're very real.
But yeah, I'm totally up for... my car, I kind of joked the other day, my car has literally been staring at me in a car park for a year, so I've got plenty of miles to rack up in the next couple of years. So yeah.
Well, the challenge is on. Let's do that, and let's see how many people we can drag across when they're allowed to the UK, because I know there's a lot of people who are in Europe who would happily get on a plane and come over and have a big event. But I think let's get all this shit behind us. I still think we've got a fair few months of up and down, and although they're saying we'll be back to normal by July, there still will be back to normal with heavy restrictions on social contacts and things like that. But yeah, I think if we can look at 2021 in the past, 2022, I think, there's no reason why we shouldn't do a big event and then make it a regular thing every year. Big content creator, get to a bit like a Comic-Con, but for content creators. Go somewhere, hire a hotel, do an event, get some, in the future, get some people in that are very well known in the kind of creative community to come down and hang out. I think it'd be really good. I think it'd be great.
We'll get Peter McKinnon down. We'll buy enough of his coins that he'll have to take notice.
Peter's up for a beer or two. We'll just tell him you own a pub, like back in the day, and say, do you want a pint? And I'm
Give
sure
him some coffee and a beer. I think he'll be game. I think we can get him down.
Let's just make our own coin. Let's make a very cool thing that he wants, and then it'll come flying over.
I'm totally up for that. I think that's one thing that I loved about this is actually just talking to people that inspire me and finding out that they're very real. I didn't think I'd ever be on a podcast like this. After making my own and only 8 people listening to it, so yeah,
I feel exactly the same. I mean, I don't do the podcast for numbers. The podcast is very different to Instagram in that I've built up that following, but I post on the podcast because I know that there's 6 or 7 dads or mates or whatever that listen to it, and like the guy that posted today, Daddy Dern, I've only met him recently on Instagram, but he's listened to my podcast at work, and that it's a different vibe, I think, podcast to Instagram and YouTube, where you're trying to hit a viral amount of followers. With the podcast, sometimes it feels like you're recording it for no one, but you get one person say, I listened to it today and that episode, you nailed it. I feel exactly the same, or I took something out of it, or it was really funny and I had a really good laugh and it made my day better. For me, podcasting, it just, the numbers completely go aside. my podcast account's 300 followers on Instagram, and it's just if one person listens to it and enjoys it, that's fine for me.
Happy days.
Exactly. Yeah. But look, Ben, thank you for coming on.
It's late now, isn't it?
It is late.
Need to get to bed.
I've got the school run in the morning. I've got to get the kids up at 7:30 and get them dressed because my wife is at work tonight. So I've got the school run to sort out. But it's been a real pleasure to have you on. It's been, like I say, it's been a long time coming. You are an account and a person that I definitely aspire to, look up to, and I look forward to your content all the time because you've got that energy that is infectious. And I think as content creators, that energy that you get off people is really a valuable commodity, and you do feed off this energy of each other, and you bounce back and forth of like, he's creating, I need to create, he's creating, and I love all of that. So keep doing what you're doing. You're a big inspiration to me. Anyone who's listened to this episode, as always, I will link to all of Ben's socials below on Spotify and Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We've obviously covered a few various topics and chatted shit in between it as well. And hopefully it's been entertaining. But Ben, thank you so much for coming on. We'll get this out in time for this weekend, which is going to be, what are we today, the 23rd? So 25th today.
25th
so,
now.
25th. So it should be up and live by the 27th. So if you are... I will obviously, if you're listening to this, you already listened to it, so there's a bit of a paradox there, but this will be up for this weekend, Ben, and I will post a link to that as soon as it's live. But again, thank you for coming on, and everyone, thank you for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. We don't have a guest lined up yet. This is very much fly by the seam of my pants at the moment with the podcast and who's brave enough to come on, but we will try and get another episode out in the next 2 weeks. So thank you for joining us, and as always, keep doing what you're doing. We believe in you as content creators. If you're a parent struggling, know that we're all struggling. We're all going through the same shit. And it's just do the best you can. And we will get through this together. And I'll catch you on the other side. Thanks, guys. Take care.
See you guys.
So thank you all. That is a wrap. We'll be moving on to the next episode very soon. Once again, thank you for tuning into this podcast. You can follow me over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. Every follow and listen is very much appreciated. Thank you all, and I hope to speak to you very soon on this podcast. And I hope you've enjoyed today's show.